निवासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनि रोषिनि दितिश्रुतरोषिनि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Hope the audio is coming fine. Let me know if it isn't. Thank you for joining me, even though I'm back after so many days. A lot of music projects have kept me busy. I was working on a very interesting project, by the way. I'm not sure if it's not like it's a mystery of sorts, but it's meant to be a surprise. I was working on a completely different modern sounding arrangement for a song, which for basically a Bangla rock band song from the 90s. They are senior to even bands like Fossils and Cactus. It's a band called Obhilasha. So with the help of artificial intelligence, we extracted just the bass guitar and the vocals, and the vocalist passed away, I think 4 or 5 years back, Kuttida. So we are using that to do a completely modern rendition of the song. It's in context with the current scenario of West Bengal, of course. It has some protest angle to it. The lyrics are probably not something all of us would agree with, but that's how it is in Bengal usually. But it is a protest song essentially, and that's why it was commissioned to me to do such a song. And it will be as if Obhilasha did this song, as if Kuttida sang this song in 2024 with modern arrangement. That's how we are targeting it. So I was putting a lot of time and effort into that. It's come out pretty good, I think, in my opinion. And as for the current topic, current affairs, news and stuff, have you all seen the law that passed today in West Bengal Assembly? First of all, an insane thing happened. Mamata Banerjee called for the resignation of the Prime Minister and Home Minister of the GOI because of the crime that happened in West Bengal. And also, Sanjay Dixit was saying, I'm not sure if it's in the law exactly in that way, but at least Sanjay Dixit said so. I'm quoting him. So he's getting an FIR on his name from Karnataka government anyway. So if anyone's pissed off with me for quoting Sanjay Dixit here, he's to be blamed, okay? Not me. So Sanjay Dixit was pointing out that the anti-rape bill that has been passed today, it basically says that even the rape victim is not supposed to be named anyway. For the first time, I think in modern history, everyone forgot it only this time in the case of this Kolkata thing. But even the rape incident is not supposed to be reported. So really intelligent steps from the government, because no one wants to. Are there any music projects on Ganesh Puja? No. Interestingly, I could have done a great job because I'm good with epic music, epic heavy music. No, it would have been nice to get some Ganesh Puja arrangements, because Ganesh Chaturthi arrangements, because with Durga Puja, we don't really get heavy demands. No, it's all about one dhak will do, and there will be those similar beats, and there will be some word salad of ma elo, dugga elo, dhaker baddi, etc. It's all very cliched. So Ailoma, I think, Ailoma Barita was that big of a hit because it had played with different kinds of arrangement ideas. There was electric guitar, ambient. I played the guitar solo as well in that arrangement playing, and the tone was by it's a music software version of the guitar tone only, but it's by that tone is usually used by progressive metal guitarist called Pliny. His band's name is also Pliny, so I used his signature tone for the guitars of Ailoma Barite. That was hilarious. And this time also it will be pretty epic. We have done a Durga Puja song with Ankita Bhattacharya. Are you a part of a band? No, I'm not anymore. I'm fully in music production these days. DX is saying the only way to counter caste polarization would be create Hindu-Muslim polarization and not sabka saath nonsense. Is industrialization, urbanization. DX. Goddank is saying, wait, rape cannot be reported by the media or police. Can you clarify? Check. Sanjay Dixit's just recent. A few hours back only he uploaded it. Hello, Dada. Hello, Shekhar. Hello, Arinda. So yes, Ganesh Chaturthi would be nice. Yeah, hi Abhay, hi RS. Let's start then. So this paper today is fascinating. I don't know where she is right now. At least when she was writing this, she was in the University of Copenhagen, Denmark. This is from she started writing this paper in 2008. She published this version in this form in 2012. So 2008 is a significant time. Remember, that's for the first time when all of a sudden leftist academics and intellectuals are waking up to the fact that CPM seems to be bad. CPIM seems to do things not so legally. CPIM seems to be a little too violent. So remember what the most gigantic hullabaloo was about in the Shingur protest was that CPIM did a lathi charge in Shingur. So of course I am a libertarian. I don't like let's say the government beating people up for absolutely no reason. But CPIM, after 3 decades, the biggest causality for waking up was a lathi charge. So you see, there was probably other shenanigans at play all over the world as well. So in 2008, Dayabati Rai, she is now I think in the University of Helsinki. She writes this fascinating paper where she shows how CPIM's policies, probably not directly, I've just gone through the abstract and conclusion. The rest of the paper will be a brand new finding for me as well. That how even leftist politics solidified those past caste structures, those past status groups in their modern form. But what happens elsewhere is that the professions are gone. The respect for those professions in the society is gone. So the status symbol of those people are gone. But they go on playing their past caste identities in a cosplaying and fancy dress competition sort of a way. What happens in Bengal is that if you disagree when I say that academics of today, IAS babus of today, lawyers of today are the Brahmins of yesteryears. If you disagree with me on this claim, then I have nothing to say with you. You'll probably disagree with everything I'm saying. But since I believe in this particular thing, what you'll notice is that exact those same Brahmin, Boidya and Kayastha families who had similar professions hundreds of years back, those same families, descendants of those same families, have those similar professions even today. And that's true for basically every Varna, every Jati in Bengal. What their ancestors used to be in what sort of a profession centuries back, they are in similar situations, in similar professions in today's context, even today. So how did this mysterious way of surviving or making caste immortal happen in Bengal, which is a state that claims to have solved the casteism issue the most? They claim this thing loudest of all. Okay, of course, I wouldn't say that caste violence is going on in the exact same ways, but some violence is of course going on. So unless you believe in a hierarchy of violence, like some of my commie friends who would say that, let's say hypothetically, if BJP comes to power in Bengal and riots happen and 5 Muslims die, it's objectively way worse off than if Trinamool comes to power and 15 CPIM men are killed, or if CPIM comes to power and 20 Trinamool people are killed. Okay, objectively, religious violence is the only unacceptable violence. Everything else is, I guess, a little more acceptable. So unless you believe in the hierarchy of different kinds of murders, you would have to notice that yes, we are probably not significantly way better off than Bihar and UP, just because Dalits don't get killed for being Dalits in West Bengal. But on the other hand, Dalits who are in Dalit-like professions in West Bengal do get killed in the end in all political violence incidents. No matter which party attacks which party, it's the lower caste populations of every political party who get killed in the end. Okay, let's start the paper now. You are pointing at wrong examples. Okay, put the right examples here. Bengal maintained all the caste social status hierarchy after removing all the dharmic values. CPM really helped, guys. Yes. The privileged castes in Bengal took up privileged professions in modern day. This caste dynamics hierarchy does not change at all. Yes. क्योंकि वो जाइगेंटिक डिस्ट्रप्शन, देखो भाई, वो ब्रिटिश का कैपिटलिज्म भी था, उसमें से एक्चुअली उस वक्त का कास्ट बेस्ड बैड बिहेवियर चला गया वो डिस्ट्रप्शन के वजह से, मगर उसके बाद कैपिटलिज्म बहुत जल्दी गायब भी हो गया, तो वहां पे डिस्ट्रप्शन होके एक जनरेशन में सबका प्रिविलेज तो चला नहीं जाएगा ना, तो प्रिविलेज था वहीं पे, फिर वो प्रिविलेज पोस्ट बंगाल फॉल फ्रॉम कैपिटलिज्म वो भी सॉलिडिफाई हो गया उस प्रिविलेज स्ट्रक्चर्स में भी. I have heard that there are no Kshatriyas in Bengal society. No, actually, the Roy surname people, either they were warriors or they were Caste Kshatriyas, who were descendants from soldiers or kings, and they are also people who are descendants of basically people who got land grants for being close to the kings and stuff. There was a big difference in British capitalism and the free market of today. Absolutely there was, but Kolkata still had a freer market than elsewhere in the country in the British era, and even near the time of about 40s, until Nehru actively started deindustrialization. Not true, Kshatriya Varna was not granted by Brahmins. Yeah, not exactly. This is what a lot of people keep bringing up, that it was not granted by Brahmins, which is the logic that also says that in Bengal everyone is either Brahmin or Shudra. So the Roy surnames might be just fake upadhis then. Bose is Caste, seventh Purush was Zamindar in Borishal, yes. What British did was mercantilism, their capitalism solidified caste system. But no, their bureaucracy solidified caste system, but their capitalism, which was not there in the entire country, which was there only in some degree in Mumbai and to a large degree in Kolkata, there it did disrupt the system. No, Nirajan, professional nepotism is different from caste discrimination. Understand, caste system is not bad, but inhuman discrimination based on caste is. Professional nepotism is exactly what caste discrimination is, because it's guilds operating like guilds and then solidifying their privileges and then considering some people pure and some people impure based on the rituals of those particular societies. When rituals change, the reasons for discrimination change, but discrimination does not go away. Okay, then let's start this. So Dayabati Roy, Center for Global South Asian Studies, Department of Cross-Cultural and Regional Studies, University of Copenhagen, Denmark. Wait, I'll put this on my front screen and that on my top screen. Okay, let's see what she says. So abstract of the paper is, this paper explores the institution of caste and its operation in a micro-level village setting of West Bengal, an Indian state where state politics at grassroots level is vibrant with functioning local self-government and entrenched political parties, meaning panchayat and stuff. This ethnographic study reveals that caste relations and caste identities have overarching dimensions in the day-to-day politics of the study villages, though caste almost ceases to operate in relation to strict religious strictures. Exactly the case with Bengal. Bengal में casteism religious basis पे नहीं होता है. Under economic compulsion, who created this economic compulsion? Socialism, Karl Marx. Under economic compulsion, the division of labor largely coincides with caste division. Exactly. In the cultural ideological field, the concept of caste hierarchy seems to continue as an influencing factor, even in the operation of leftist politics. Yes, every communist you know of is probably Brahmin. If not, then he's Caste or Boidya. Every celebrity Bengal you have heard of is probably Brahmin. If not, he's probably Boidya or Caste. In contemporary India, the institution of caste seems to be one of the major factors that influence day-to-day politics in multifarious ways. It has reconstituted itself and taken newer forms in the course of its interaction with modern politics. In fact, caste and modern politics in India are entwined in such a way that both mold consistently with each other in relation to power. Proximity to power is everything. But most importantly, the trajectory of the pattern of changes in caste relations vis-a-vis in the context of contemporary politics has not been uniform in different parts of India. Its changing pattern is very distinct in different Indian states depending on their specific histories of development. Well said. The question of how West Bengal, especially rural West Bengal, differs from other Indian states in terms of caste is answered by the long held political myth, even among academics, that caste does not matter in West Bengal. Dayabati Rai has come out swinging. She woke up and chose violence. Therefore, West Bengal is an appropriate field for the inquiry into this question, since the changes in village society in West Bengal have probably been more spectacular in the Indian context, particularly during the last 3 decades, 1980 to 2010, interestingly, when it was the height of the most solidified era of CPIM's power in West Bengal. During this period, according to Doipayan Bhattacharya, quote, rural West Bengal has been subjected to extensive governmental intervention in the form of land reforms and democratic decentralization. This has made West Bengal's rural political economy distinctly different from the rest of the country, end quote. This difference from the rest of the country is so much so in the social and political aspects of the state that he argues political parties in rural West Bengal largely transcended caste, religion, and ethnicity-based organizations which have some relevance in other parts of the country. This argument undoubtedly deserves attention when Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, the guy who declared Bhadralok as a separate caste altogether, the Brahman, Vaidya, Kaisto castes, jatis. This argument undoubtedly deserves attention when Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, another renowned scholar, asserts that, quote, by making some adjustments in form, the caste system in Bengal has managed to sustain its essence. And in that sense, Bengal is no exception to the general pan-Indian pattern. This is a brilliant quote, and I think I 100% agree with this. Except the caste-based bad behaviors are probably different, although again, if we bring up the deaths of predominantly only lower caste people in political riots, then of course Shekhar Bandyopadhyay stands vindicated. This paper explores by ethnographic inquiry into everyday politics and to what extent the traditional caste system has been transformed under the impact of socio-economic and political reforms undertaken particularly during the last 3 decades of uninterrupted left front rule. So far, what she is saying is basically what mysterious sociologist and we and us basically have been discussing for the last few months, last 6-7 months from this channel, right? Why hasn't this paper with this professor with such credentials also not been that popular? Why has not this narrative become that popular? I would bet this paper, the contents of this paper served a purpose in that era, 2008, 9, 10, when the purpose was just eliminating CPIM. But after that, when West Bengal needed to be glorified as a woman-run state, as a state that is a capital of art and culture, as a state that is way better than UP and Bihar, that state cannot be criticized in these ways, because Shekhar Bandyopadhyay is essentially arguing that it's no different from those plebeian and casteist states of the rest of the country. तो तब इस पेपर के contents को कैसे भाव दिया जाएगा? So again, I think these conversations इतिहास के पन्नों में कहीं खो गया. Other researchers have revealed that the institution of caste as a system is rapidly dying, quote unquote, but that individual castes are flourishing as a consequence of the spread of democratic politics in post-colonial India, or we could call it a spade, positive discrimination and state-sanctioned status rise. It is a truism that, quote unquote, localized traditional system of production of food, grains, and other necessities based on caste-wise division of labor has changed a lot in recent times. The hierarchy based on ritual purity and pollution, which was an essential characteristic of the caste system, has also undergone profound changes under the impact of modernization and other socio-economic factors, meaning a bit of capitalism, of course. But it does not follow that caste as a quote-unquote system has disappeared, because I think the use of the word system is very important. System means vyavastha. Vyavastha has not really disappeared, I would argue. Rather, it is functioning in different ways and, quote, is being accepted in its new forms, end quote. Exactly. And ये तो inevitable भी है, but exactly in the past forms वाले कास्ट ही कैसे यहाँ पे सर्वाइव कर रहे हैं, वो कैसे इनएविटेबल हो गया, वो इनएविटेबल नहीं है, वो कैसे इमॉर्टल बन गया, दैट इज आई थिंक व्हाट वी नीड टू रिसर्च. This paper looks at the caste dynamics and caste politics of West Bengal, which has witnessed several significant changes in its countryside in the period under discussion, and reveals that caste relations and caste identity have overarching dimensions in the day to day politics of the study villages. The paper clearly divulges how caste adapts to the existing power structure, that is, the political party and the panchayat in a rural setting, and maintains, in essence, the system of social hierarchy. Caste, occupations, and land. Notwithstanding all the success stories in land reforms during the last 3 decades of left front government in West Bengal, the Bagdis, the Dules, and the Muchis, that is, scheduled caste communities, and the tribal communities as well in 2 villages, Kalipur and Kodampur, in general, possessed either no land or only meager amounts of land. They had to work mainly as agricultural laborers in the farmlands owned by the upper castes, the middle and higher castes of the villages, while in Kalipur, the proportion of scheduled caste people in the total population of the village was 41%. They possessed only 8.15% of the village agricultural land, even after CPIM's land reforms. Okay, more than 2/3 of them, 69%, were landless. The scheduled caste families owned an average of 0.07 acre of land, whilst the amount was 1.5 acres for the landed upper caste families. These figures demonstrate that the scheduled caste people of Kalipur were not only socially disadvantaged, but at the same time, they represented the propertyless and economically backward sections of the rural people. The scheduled caste communities were so much identified with manual labor that the upper caste people called their hamlets labor para, where para meant small habitations in Bengali parlance or neighborhood, based usually on castes in rural areas. Yes, this always happens, and professions always get associated with neighborhoods. Like there's a term for non-Bengalis. You all probably have seen pictures of streets, Kolkata streets during Durga Pujas, with those fancy kinds of lightings. So we call it, if there is any good lighting in anybody's home, we call it Chandannagar lighting, because Chandannagar, the place in South Bengal, is famous for having people who are great with setting up those sorts of lightings. In Kodampur, while the proportion of the Bagdis, the only scheduled caste community in the village, was 42% of the total population, they held only 20% of the village agricultural land. Here, 58% of the scheduled caste families were landless, and the remaining 42% owned an average 0.2 acre per family. It could also be seen from the household survey that 73% of the scheduled caste households, that is 95% of the tribal households in Kalipur, and 62% scheduled caste households in Kodampur, depended primarily on agricultural labors for their livelihood. The rest of the scheduled caste households depended either on cultivation, livestock rearing, or non-farm work. The scheduled caste cultivators were mainly sharecroppers or lessee cultivators, supplementing their income from the meager amount of land they owned. The non-farm work on which the scheduled caste families depended was mostly agriculture-based, for instance, laboring in cold storage centers and trading and transporting vegetables and other agricultural products. Contrary to the households in Kalipur, in Kodampur, a few scheduled caste families owned sizable amounts of land, an average of 2 acres or more, and 2 families had government jobs. It is obvious from the above figures that the primary dependence of the scheduled caste people on agricultural labor stemmed from their situation of landlessness. Moreover, these people did not have much access to a non-farm means of livelihood, so were forced to depend on laboring on the lands of the higher and middle caste people, or capitalism to CPIM ne rok diya. These sharecroppers, many of whom remain unregistered. Okay, let me check a footnote. The sharecropper or borgadar is a tenant who borrows land for cultivation from landlords or other landholding classes in return for a share of the crops produced on the land. The left-front government launched a program called Operation Borga in 1978, under which the government functionaries would record the names of the borgadars to ensure them greater tenure security and protection against the threat of eviction. This program achieved startling results, as around 1.2 million sharecroppers, around 65 to 70% of the total number of borgadars in the state, registered their names in the first 3 years. And after that, it solidified. Farmers remained farmers. So these sharecroppers, many of whom remained unregistered, even though the left-front government in West Bengal claimed it had been successful in registering them, suffered substantial losses through having to pay 1/3 of their produce to the landowners. At a time when profits in agriculture took a downturn due to increasing costs in general, besides the normal risks involved in attaining high yields, this one-third share of the produce taken by the landowners had a negative impact on the earnings of the sharecroppers, with the result that they were hardly able to recuperate their labor costs or recover the cost of cultivation of certain crops. Nevertheless, they still had to pay the stipulated one-third share to the landowners, resulting in indebtedness. And back then, indebtedness meant usually lifetime indebtedness. Yeah, hi Ninar, hi Jai Shriram. With the spread of market economy, implementation of land reform measures to a certain extent, and above all, the increasing assertion of the subaltern people in the countryside, rural laborers have been largely successful in severing some forms of bondage sustained by the traditional caste system. Today, the laborers of rural Bengal are apparently free to negotiate the sale of their labor in the labor market, but this freedom is severely constrained by different factors. Firstly, the socially backward rural people have very little access to non farm work, which is scarce in rural areas and not readily available to them in urban areas. Secondly, these poorly paid rural people who seek jobs in urban areas are very often engaged in the most insecure and risky jobs in the informal sector. In Kodampur, being located not far from the urban industrial areas, a number of people had opted for jobs here. But their experiences had not been pleasant, and many of them had to return to agricultural work, which seemed to them a more reliable means of livelihood. Such people were seen to be actively participating in the recent anti-land acquisition movement. Thirdly, an abundance of laborers in rural Bengal means they have to remain idle for long periods in a year. All these factors hamper the bargaining power of the laboring people and increase their dependence on the upper caste landowning community. And bargaining power to kam hoga hi jab socialism hoga. Nandish is saying, I mean, if left promises you anything that all of us will be equally poor. Yes, of course. In both the study villages, these three factors were evident, though in different degrees, pointing to the fact that the caste-wise division of labor had been in the main persisting in both the villages. This appears contrary to the observation of Srinivas that the system of production based on caste-wise division of labor was quote-unquote fast breaking down in rural India. Rather, the earlier observation of Srinivas that the quote, the lower castes are tenants, servants, landless laborers, debtors, and clients of the higher castes, end quote, remained more relevant to the ground situation existing in rural Bengal. Though the strictures based on Hindu Dharma Shastra on caste-wise division of labor have largely disappeared from the rural scene, except for rituals and ceremonies. Oh my god. Guys, 15 people have left the live stream in between. Probably because they got butthurt. But see the insane repercussions of what Dayabati Roy is saying. कि अभी बंगाल में जो कास्टिज्म है उसके साथ धर्मशास्त्र का भी कोई संबंध नहीं है, फिर भी ये चल रहा है. उसका ब्लेम किस पे है? राजा मनु पे है या कार्ल मार्क्स पे है? Dayabati Roy is absolutely making the distinction crystal clear that casteism in Bengal survives not because of Hinduism, because of leftist politics. The traditional pattern of division of labor based on caste hierarchy had in the main remained under economic compulsions. ये economic compulsions क्या है? ये है leftist का bread and butter. Economically कंपल्सरी बना दो कुछ चीजें करना, कुछ काइंड्स ऑफ बिहेवियर्स, ताकि हम हमेशा के लिए पावर में रह सके और हमेशा लोग भिखारी रहे और हमेशा हम बोलते रहे कि हमको पावर में रखो नहीं तो कैपिटलिस्ट आ जाएगा. Furthermore, the dependence of rural laborers on the upper caste landed community for their mere survival seems to seriously hinder the attainment of autonomy in economic relations. Obviously, ये तो होगा ही. Land ownership has always remained a pillar of caste division in the society. The Anthropological Survey of India recorded similar observations in its study of 4,635 communities or castes under its People of India project, where it noted better control over land and other resources as one of the characteristic features of higher castes in India. Modern education, preferably in English language. English language 1982 में किसने बंद किया? Modern education, preferably in English language, cultural values and a sense of social propriety, as well as land ownership. Cultural values क्या है? Cultural capital, like in the sense of Pierre Bourdieu and even Max Weber. तो English education गोली मार दिया CPIM ने. Cultural values तो किसी के पास, cultural capital जो कि अपर कास्ट का है वो तो लोअर कास्ट के पास था ही नहीं, which is why they were lower caste in the first place. They could not acquire those cultural capital, I would argue, because they did not have access to good quality education, which they could have. And a sense of social propriety. Yeah, social propriety is different for different people objectively, but some things are considered proper only if some people do it. ये तो रेने जेराट का रिसर्च है. तो अपर कास्ट जिस चीज को सोशल प्रॉपर्टी बोलेंगे वो प्रॉपर्टी भी लोअर कास्ट के पास आ नहीं पाया, क्योंकि इकोनॉमिक मोबिलिटी भी नहीं है, और ऐसा इकोनॉमिक मोबिलिटी नहीं है, इन सच अ वे इकोनॉमिक मोबिलिटी नहीं है कि भोसरी के कास्ट मोबिलिटी भी नहीं है. Cultural values and a sense of social propriety as well as land ownership have been the characteristic features of higher castes in Bengal since the middle of the 19th century. Now let's check out these gigantic footnotes. 2 more people left because of getting butthurt. E ka ho gaya. Trigger reaction. Yes, two more people left because of triggers. Credit of casteism Bengal in Bengal casteism goes to Jyoti Basu. Yes, that is basically what Dayabati Roy is saying. Let's check out the footnotes. The agricultural laborers whom the author met in Kalipur all expressed their grievances over the lack of employment available in the village. कैसे होगा भोसरी के? कैपिटलिस्ट नहीं है तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं होगा. दे रिपोर्ट, क्योंकि तुम तो तोला दे के खत्म हो गए हो, या फिर सरकार को कुछ करना चाहिए तो सरकार ने वहां पे कुछ फ्री के चक्कर में कुछ 100 दिन का काम वहां घोषणा कर दिया होगा, और फिर वो 100 दिन का काम भी कोई पार्टी का गुंडा आके ले लिया होगा सैलरी. They reported that in a year they used to get hardly 90 to 100 days work in agriculture. Lol. You don't say. Lower castes like the Napits, Kamars. Napit in Bengali means barber, okay? Kamar, I forgot the meaning of Kamar. Kumors are the people who work with mud. And Muchis, cobblers, had to serve the, I guess Muchis are cobblers in every language in India, right? Muchis had to serve the upper castes during ritual practices and rites or ceremonies. By serving the upper castes, the lower castes followed their traditional past, sometimes under compulsion. Not because of Rajamanu, because of economic compulsion created by CP fucking IM. One Napit woman said, "My sons are very reluctant to serve the upper castes on their rituals and ceremonies. They feel ashamed to perform it and take the payment in kinds that are usually offered to them, but it is our duty to serve them in various ceremonies and rites. If my sons are not able to serve them, we have to manage the job by arranging another Napit from outside the village." Interestingly, one of her 2 sons was running a haircutting saloon in a nearby town. But if the saloon breaks down or you go broke because of paying tola to your local communist egalitarian dada, then you'll have to go back to your traditional profession. Lol. Nina is saying what they expected to cause casteism, Manusmriti, what really caused it? Communism, yes. Baba Bistil is saying bonjour. Yes. Check out from the beginning Baba Bistil, or if not, at least from the last 10 minutes, because we stumbled upon insane things where this absolutely legit academic from University of Helsinki claims that casteism in Bengal happens not because of Dharma Shastras, religion has nothing to do with, it's because of CPIM's policies. Economic compulsion, she repeatedly goes on saying. Interestingly, one of her 2 sons. Okay. So, since then, the upper castes of Bengali Hindu society, mainly Brahmin, Boidyo, Kayastho, in general called the Bhadralok, the respectable people, the gentle people, were accorded recognition as superior in social status to the in comparison to the mass of the people. In fact, historically, the Bhadralok status was not ascribable. It had to be achieved. And caste did not play an important role in selecting Bhadralok. However, the upper castes were generally recognized as Bhadralok because the educated section of people were mainly drawn from these higher castes. So you see, it's a sort of a statistical fallacy. कि किस तरह से ये सब term solidify हुआ. So it's not that you do these things and you become Bhadralok. It's that whatever you do is already considered respectable. This social categorization, however, the upper castes were generally recognized as Bhadralok because the educated section of people were mainly drawn from the higher castes. So 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. This social categorization was actually defined in terms of attitude to manual labor rather than to caste itself. Those who were educated and refrained from carrying out manual labor were known as the Bhadralok. Hence, academia. Hence, academia is equal to Brahmins of yesteryears. Hence, academia even today does some good research and does some bad research, just like the evil Brahmins of yesteryears and the good Brahmins of yesteryears. Some IAS Babu you will see going viral for cracking down upon some evil police, and there will be Babus who are rishwat khors. There will be asshole lawyers, there will be good lawyers, there will be asshole judges, there will be good judges. Nothing different from yesteryears as far as I'm concerned. So historically, the Bhadralok status was not ascribable, it had to be achieved, and caste did not play an important role in selecting Bhadralok. However, the upper castes were generally recognized as Bhadralok because the educated section of people were mainly drawn from these higher castes. This social categorization was actually defined in terms of attitude to manual labor rather than to caste itself. Those who were educated and refrained from carrying out manual labor were known as the Bhadralok. And I have no problem in saying that, yeah, this is probably a remnant, the last ruins of the ancient caste system that existed in Hindu society for about 500 years prior. But ये गया क्यों नहीं? क्यों सेम लोगों के डिसेंडेंट्स मैनुअल लेबर में रह गए? क्यों ज्यादातर मैनुअल लेबरर्स के डिसेंडेंट्स नॉन मैनुअल लेबर के प्रोफेशंस में नहीं पहुंच पाए? वहां पे सीपीआईएम कम्स इन. Manual labor were known as the Bhadralok. So those who were educated and refrained from carrying out manual labor were known as the Bhadralok. See, even the name explains so much about those terms like ritual pollution and ritual purity. कि तुम अभद्र हो क्योंकि तुम मैनुअल लेबर करते हो. सो इट्स इन अ सेंस रिचुअल पोल्यूशन. आज का रिचुअल चेंज हो गया है. दैट्स व्हाट आई वाज सेइंग इन द बिगिनिंग. तो रिचुअल प्योरिटी है कब? अगर तुम एकेडमिया में हो. रिचुअल प्योरिटी किसके पास नहीं है? कौन रिचुअली पोल्यूटेड है? जो कि मैनुअल लेबर करता है. तो राजा मनु को गाली दो या ना दो, रिचुअल purity and ritual pollution तुम्हारे दिमाग में से जाएगा नहीं भोसड़ी के. In reality, however, there was a caste dimension too. The Bhadralok overwhelmingly belonged to the three upper castes, whilst the scheduled caste groups were predominantly involved in low-paid manual jobs and considered to be chotolok. Yes, but it can be seen at present that a division of the society into chotoloks and Bhadraloks, based mainly on caste positions of different social groups, is prevalent in rural West Bengal. The terms Chotolok and Bhadralok are now commonly used in Bengali parlance to mean people belonging to the lower caste and higher caste respectively. These terms are of course used by the educated higher caste people who regard themselves as Bhadralok or gentlemen and others as Chotoloks in the derogatory sense. And to be fair to dumb commies, they will say that no, even a lower caste person can be Bhadralok. Of course, I consider him Bhadro. I would respect him if I saw him on the street. But that same Bhadralok will consider that Chotolok again when that Chotolok makes a reel, Instagram reel, that he finds cringeworthy. तब उनका खुद का टेस्ट इस पे इम्पोज भी हो जाएगा कि तुम्हारा इंस्टाग्राम रील क्रिंजवर्दी है क्योंकि मुझे वो क्रिंजवर्दी लगता है. वो मैं जिस तरह से इंस्टाग्राम रील बनाना चाहता हूं, जिस तरह से मैं डांस करता हूं, जिस तरह से मेरा मेकअप है, वो मेकअप तुम्हारा नहीं है, तो वो भोजश्री के वो क्रिंज वर्दी कंटेंट ही बन जाएगा नाम से ही. वो रिचुअली पोल्यूटेड इंस्टाग्राम रील्स होगा. व्हाट आई एम नोटिसिंग इज दैट यू विल सी प्रीटी सून style and fashion sense of upper castes is going to change in the next 10-15 years drastically, because with the advent of so many makeup tutorials, I'm saying this mainly in the world of women, mainly in the case of women. Women's style sense and fashion sense is absolutely going to drastically change in the next 10-15 years, because earlier on, the way we used to see richer upper caste women dress and fix their get-up and their makeup was done in a very specific way, which required people to work on them who had a lot of skill set in those things and a lot of price as well, and when wealth was accumulated in some castes only. Now, because of the advent of the popularity of makeup tutorials and stuff, you'll notice anyone and everyone in the remote mofusils of West Bengal, even lower caste women, are dressing up in a way where you would think of them as if they are from the elite families of North Kolkata, but only when they start speaking Bengali or Hindi, then you realize that, oh no, she is actually from a village in West Bengal. So what the upper castes are going to do is they are going to let go of their style sense that exists today, because they will always want to separate themselves from the lower castes. ये हमेशा चलता रहेगा. Lower castes, in every sense, in every metaphorical sense, in every society, will always play catch up with the upper castes. The moment they reach those capitals of the upper castes will leave that and do something else, probably go back to something else. Like football used to be the poor man's sport in Bengal. Cricket used to be the elite sport. The moment local panwalas and rickshawalas started watching cricket, etc., all of a sudden, English medium schools, non-elite English medium schools, where football was not popular, where cricket was the go-to sport, when nobody even knew how to spell Manchester United, all of a sudden, 2006-07 onwards, even in middle-class English medium schools, English Premier League and football becomes the sport to watch, because cricket by then has become sort of a lowly sport that poor rickshawalas watch, and I watch English fucking Premier League. Same with Bangla bands. Bangla bands started in the families of elite Bhadralok people who had listened to a lot of rock music. The moment Bangla band becomes too popular, elite families in Kolkata switch to English and actively hating Bangla bands. Okay, Fossils becomes a derogatory sort of a lowly band. Okay, all of a sudden they are gigantic Metallica fans, even though their parents were the ones who were telling the parents of those Bangla band people that yes, I am a Marxist. Karl Marx is, of course, an Indian who was born in West Bengal. But you metalhead, you must stop doing these Western music stuff. You must do Shastriya Sangit and Indian-based Sangit. And their knowledge of Indian music, of course, means knowing some two Bengali folk songs and going to Doverland once in a while and going there, and instead of listening to the classical concert, only going on discussing what the fuck the rag is. I know the name of the rag. That's the compensation they go on with. So anyway, Abhay Singh, I have been watching Sarabhai versus Sarabhai on YouTube. The kind of comments I see, Maya against, exactly. Those are classic status group problems. Okay, let's continue now. The terms Chotalok and Bhadralok are now commonly used in Bengali parlance to mean people belonging to the lower castes and higher castes respectively. These terms are, of course, used by the educated higher caste people who regard themselves as Bhadraloks or gentlemen, and others as Chotaloks in the derogatory sense. The term Chotalok is also used among higher castes to abuse somebody of their own caste. Yes. In the contemporary rural power structure based on the practices of grassroots democracy and caste-wise reservations, the traditional social hierarchical order seems to be largely continuing in new forms. Yahi hai hamara argument. But these social and political... Now, so commies, first of all, can't disagree with us anymore, because Max Weber se leke Pierre Bourdieu indirectly, and these people directly, Shekhar Bandyopadhyay directly are saying these things. And that small section of Bengali Hindutvadis who don't want these accusations on West Bengal also probably can't... Okay, they will probably dispute these things because these are written by mainstream academics who are Western stooges and stuff. In the contemporary rural power structure based on the practices of grassroots democracy and caste-wise reservations, the traditional social hierarchical order seems to be largely continuing in new forms. Yes, so those Bengali Hindutvadis who go on rejecting these facts will have to lose arguments when commies say that, it's because of Hinduism that casteism happens. But since they have not read these papers where mainstream commie academics are saying that the current caste system in Bengal has nothing to do with Hinduism, they will be left flabbergasted and will probably end up quoting some obscure YouTuber in YouTube. But these social and political aspects of caste assume different shapes in different villages depending on the specific conditions of the particular villages. In Kalipur and Kodampur, socio-political developments did not follow similar patterns, resulting in different relationships among different caste groups. The next section focuses on the social aspects of caste that made the differences prominent between the two study villages. Caste status and stratification. Caste status and stratification. Status का discussion आ गया है. Let's see if Max Weber comes to this discussion. Divyamani is saying there was a Bengali commie girl I met in college. She said, I don't care about TMC but will vote Mamata to prevent BJP from coming to power. And Divya, I guarantee you that's a Brahmin girl. In Kalipur, the difference between the scheduled caste communities and the dominant Mahisho and other upper castes was quite evident from their separate habitations, situated not far from one another, but distinct in the shape and condition of the houses of their respective caste-based hamlets. While the upper caste houses were comparatively spacious and mostly brick-built, some of them two-storied with boundary walls, the scheduled caste habitations consisting of mud houses were very congested, with no fencing separating one house from another, no space for separate kitchen, toilet, or cattle keeping. Humans and animals huddled in the same rooms, no separate space for bathing for the women, no household water supply, and no sanitation facilities, despite the assurance of providing core civic services like drinking water supply and sanitation to all citizens by the central government and the left front government of the state as well. And this is pretty much how Motuas, the Bengali Hindu partition refugees, even today live in West Bengal. As the Panchayat insisted that every rural household should avail itself of the subsidized toilets supplied by it, in most cases, the scheduled caste families constructed the toilets but used the space not for defecation but for other purposes such as the storage of fuel. In fact, यही तो होता है, इसीलिए तो इंडिया का वो मतलब ओपन डेफिकेशन का एक्यूजेशन इतना लगता है कि इतने गरीब है, इतने चीजें रखने की जरूरत है कि टॉयलेट अगर बनाया भी दिया तो उसमें भी कुछ अदर चीजें रख के बाहर भी टॉयलेट करेंगे. In fact, these people had little space left for constructing such toilets and hence apprehended that these would further pollute the homestead rather than improve their sanitation, particularly when they did not have water facilities in their houses. Wow. Generally, each scheduled caste hamlet had only one hand pump, which was commonly used for all domestic purposes by all the households and therefore constantly in use. And who knows what the fuck kind of water they were getting, which is why intelligence has to be directly related to poverty. कि बचपन से ही ये सोचो कि कैसा चाइल्ड न्यूट्रिशन हुआ है, दिमाग का कैसा भोसरा बचपन से बना है, तो इसका आईक्यू क्या होगा, तो ये तो ऑब्वियसली बड़े होके तृणमूल के गुंडे ही बनेंगे और क्या बनेंगे. Though electricity had been provided in the village as far back as 1984, and the electric posts were located very close to the scheduled caste hamlets, almost none of the scheduled caste households were connected. Check footnote hai. 4 more people have left because of getting triggered. The central government had set a couple of programs like the Rajiv Gandhi National Drinking Water Mission, Sajal Dhara and Total Sanitation Campaign to ensure drinking water and sanitation services to all the citizens of India. The left-front government of West Bengal has also set the agenda for improving the core civic services by the panchayats in its various documents. तो लैंप पोस्ट बिठा मगर कनेक्शन नहीं पहुंचा. Households were connected. Government has pumped major funding into primary school education through its literacy campaign, and the present generation of children are mostly enrolled in village primary schools, though their attendance is intermittent, but still progress in education seems abysmally low, and the quality of education तो छोड़ ही दो, और English education वैसे 1982 में बंद भी हो चुका है. I have witnessed that some और English education जो बंद हुआ उसके वजह से Bengali skills improve हुआ, ऐसा भी नहीं हुआ. Think of the 1920s, 30s, when the famous Bengali nationalists are coming up. Those guys, part of the Macaulayan British education system, no English in and out, inside out, no Western philosophy inside out, no fucking Hindu philosophy inside out, no Sanskrit inside out, no physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology inside out. Government has pumped major funding into primary school education through its literacy campaign and but still progress in education seems abysmally low. I wonder why. Fund deke bhi abysmally low kaise hua? I have witnessed that some children of class 4 standard remain incapable of writing their own names legibly in the vernacular language. Of fucking course, yes. In particular seasons, the children of scheduled caste families have to engage in cultivation works apart from their day-to-day involvement in various domestic labors like cattle grazing. A visit to the village primary school immediately reveals the stark disparity between the children of the upper castes and those from the scheduled caste background, distinct not only by their attire and appearance, but also by the pattern of their sitting in the classrooms. Well said, brilliant. This is social capital as well. And upper caste के घर में जिसके ancestors कुछ दिनों पहले तक पूरा का पूरा वेद, महाभारत, रामायण, गीता मुखस्त रखते थे, अब उनके बच्चों को बोला जा रहा है कि ठीक है, अब थोड़ा कुछ ये सब छोड़ के कुछ और भी पढ़ो. बट देखो, नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन ऐसे ही होता है. देखो इस चीज में एग्जाम्पल के तौर पे देखो राम जी ने क्या किया था. रिमेंबर व्हाट Lakshman did there. Remember what Hanuman did there. Remember this shloka says this. These are the training that upper caste kid is getting in his family. और लोअर कास्ट किड के फैमिली में ये तो नहीं होगा, मगर ये तो रिप्लेस रिजर्वेशन से भी नहीं किया जाएगा, मगर जिस चीज से किया जाएगा वो है फकिंग अपॉर्चुनिटी, इकोनॉमिक अपॉर्चुनिटी और अ सिग्निफिकेंट कल्चरल कैपिटल लाइक इंग्लिश एजुकेशन. इस दोनों चीज का मां बहन कर दिया सीपीआईएम ने. The upper caste children generally occupy the front seats and respond the most in class lessons. Most of the children from scheduled caste families fail to continue their studies beyond the primary level. Funding किए हैं primary education में. Hi Anand, yeah, make sure to check out from the beginning. भद्रलोक vacuum will be filled by someone else, power structure will be same. Yes, वो disruption ही बार बार जरूरी है. Savarkar Ambedkar had to fight for eradicating caste discrimination. How suddenly social discrimination stopped and only in marriage it's looked up now. Bengal में stop भी नहीं हुआ. In some ways, of course, yeah. Tumpa stands for the typical unsophisticated Medinipur People's Association. Exactly. If this is not discrimination of caste, exactly. Anant तो Anant तुमने क्या क्या मिस किया पता नहीं. This academic from University of Helsinki just said a while back that the way casteism survives in West Bengal has nothing to do with Hinduism. Indirectly, she said that it has nothing to do with dharma shastras. It has everything to do with economic compulsions. And her timeline of research is 1980 to 2010. Who do you think was creating those economic compulsions? Okay, in West Bengal. So you see what kind of paper this is. Yes, Anand, yes. So most of the children from scheduled caste families fail to continue their studies beyond the primary level. In Kalipur, of the total of 37 people who passed the secondary examination, only 2 belong to the scheduled caste communities. And I will bet that they also were able to do so because their parents were probably CPIM's gundas or local big netas. Okay, CPIM के घरों में अपर कास्ट से थोड़ा कल्चरल कैपिटल ट्रिकल डाउन हो जाता है, क्योंकि उन लोगों को भी लेट्स से मतलब थोड़ा वो प्रॉक्सिमिटी हो जाता है ना. रविन्द्रनाथ पढ़ो एटसेट्रा. रविन्द्रनाथ तो बुर्जुआ कवि था, फिर भी वो मतलब और कुछ नहीं तो कार्ल मार्क्स ही पढ़ो बंगाली में, तो थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ने के ओर थोड़ा एक प्रायोरिटाइजेशन या फोकस रहना चाहिए, ये दिमाग में घुस जाता है लोअर कास्ट सीपीआईएम फैमिलीज में भी. थैंक यू भूपेंद्र. दिस इज फॉर ट्रिगर इफेक्ट. लॉल. यस आनंद, एग्जैक्टली. Interestingly, both the scheduled castes and the higher castes of the village had the same number of government jobs, but such government jobs held by a few scheduled castes did not change the status of these communities. Rather, the two jobs. तो देखो ये कास्ट के बेसिस पे ये क्या बोल दिया दयाबती रॉय ने, who is a caste herself. She is saying ये गवर्नमेंट जॉब जो शेड्यूल कास्ट को मिलता है, which is probably on the basis of caste only, that did not change the status of these communities. So reservation does not work, guys, in the main way it's supposed to work. Status groups जो है caste वो unaffected रह गया. Rather, the two job holder families became somewhat detached from the rest of their communities by constructing concrete houses away from their caste habitats and through their efforts to upgrade their status and be accepted into the Bhadralok category. This is exactly what I said half an hour back or 15 minutes back, that the lower castes in every context in metaphorically all lower castes of all the world will go on playing catch up with upper castes. See, यही हो रहा है. This phenomenon might be an instance of aspiration of upward mobility of some individual families belonging to the lower caste, but whether this aspiration of upward mobility of a few individual families of the backward communities can be fulfilled or can initiate a process of upward mobility of the communities as a whole probably depends upon certain other factors, which will be examined below in the case of Kodampur. और वो तो बंगाल में नहीं हुआ है. The 3 lower castes of Kalipur, namely the Bagdis, the Dules and Muchis, belong to the Antyaj caste as defined by Sanyal. Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal, guys. Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal is that genius whose paper we discussed, which we called How to Buy Your Caste, where Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal also basically indirectly says or shows how Brahmins were not only the evil people who solidified caste system, Brahmins were in fact the people who were attesting, who were sanctioning caste mobility, upward mobility. अमीर बन जाओ, ब्राह्मण पकड़ो, अपना खुद का फेक जीनियोलॉजी बना दो कि तुम कोई अपर कास्ट से डिसेंडेंट हुए हो कुछ दिनों के लिए, एंसेस्टर्स के कोई एंसेस्टर के कुछ खराब काम की वजह से तुमको पनिशमेंट के तौर पे लोअर कास्ट बना दिया गया था, या फिर तुम किसी देवता के ही डिसेंडेंट बन गए हो, ये सब अटेस्टेशन का काम तब के आईएएस ब्राह्मण्स करते थे. दैट इज रंजन शान्याल. सो सोशल मोबिलिटी इन बंगाल, पैपायरस कोलकाता. देयर अंत्यज कास्ट क्या है, सन्याल ने डिफाइन किया है. The Antyaj castes constitute the lowest strata of the caste hierarchy. They include the untouchables, whose touch is capable of polluting persons belonging to the caste ranking above. They are presumed to be members of the non-Brahminical social groups who do not follow the Brahminical ritual and cultural pattern. That means they are ranked below the Naboshakha castes. Like the Naboshakha means new shakha, okay, new branches of castes like Shodgops, Mahishos, Goalas. Goala means goel. So the cattle herders, I guess, or the people who had cows, and napits, meaning barbers, who follow the Brahminical ceremonial activities, rituals, customs, commensalities, behavioral patterns, and values. Separate priests, who are considered lower or unclean Varna Brahmins among the Brahmins, oversee. डेक्लन क्विगली का याद आ रहा है किसी को? देखो, separate priests who are considered lower or unclean Varna Brahmins among the Brahmins, they oversee ritual ceremonies and worshipping for these lower castes. अब प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि ये जो ब्राह्मण्स है जो कि लोअर कास्ट या फिर लोअर रिचुअली लिटिल मोर पॉपुलेटेड, रिचुअली लिटिल मोर पॉल्यूटेड प्रोफेशंस वालों के लिए प्रीस्ट के काम करते हैं, इन प्रीस्ट के डिसेंडेंट्स को भी उन जैसे लोगों के लिए ही प्रीस्ट बनना पड़ेगा. which is how Declan Quigley shows that ये जो claim है कि Brahmins are that all-encompassing gigantic hydra, deep state sort of an evil organization in India which runs this evil caste system which is absolutely solid and rigid for thousands of years. That can't fucking work because the value of the Brahmin, the respect for the Brahmin depends on who he serves. Not only is his value dependent on his proximity to power, the problem is that even his descendants are stuck in that same structure by birth. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि एक बार्बर का घर का जो पूजा करता है जो ब्राह्मण, उसका बेटा अचानक कोई राजा का ब्राह्मण बन जाएगा, ये भी नहीं होगा. तो that was affecting everybody. That is the genius of Declan Quigley's research. Separate priests who are considered lower or unclean Varna Brahmins among the Brahmins, they oversee ritual ceremonies and worshipping for these lower castes. But it was not the fact that the people of low castes in Kalipur were constrained to remain at the most disadvantageous position in the gathering or festival as described by Sanyal. Rather, both the upper and lower castes of Kalipur were seen to be participating almost with equal jubilation in the main festival of the village on the occasion of Kali Pujo, worshipping the goddess Kali. और यही एक्सक्यूज के तौर पे बंगाली हिंदुत्ववादीज एंड कॉमिस्ट देते हैं. The weird nexus between the small section of Bengali Hindutvatis and communists of the country of India is that Bengal does not have casteism because everyone celebrates Kali Puja together. Whereas in probably other weirdly casteist societies, some lower caste people would be asked to not attend those Kali Pujas. तो हमारा तो काली पूजा इतना इंक्लूसिव है कि हमारे तो दुर्गा पूजा के पंडाल के अंदर there is no God but Allah का प्रेयर भी चलाया जाता है. This had been, and in fact there is no God but Allah का ट्रांसलेशन अमर्त्य सेन के बुक आइडेंटिटी एंड वायलेंस का जो बंगाली ट्रांसलेशन है उसमें दिया गया है कि भगवान छाड़ा कोनो भगवान नहीं. ओके, सो देयर इज नो गॉड एक्सेप्ट गॉड. That is what apparently the second line of the Azan says. Okay, not that there is no God but Allah, but there is no God but God. There is no Allah except Allah. Basically, what the book has argued in the Bengali translation, at least. I don't know whose idea it was. If it was Amartya Sen's idea directly or not, I don't know. तो या शेखर लॉजिक उसमें है कि अल्लाह का ट्रांसलेशन है गॉड, तो देयर इज नो गॉड बट गॉड. This had been the Sholoana festival, okay, of the neighboring villages of Kalipur and Madhupur, which a few Mahishos had initiated about 15 years previously and were key in its organization. But as the puja or festival began to attract larger crowds amounting to a few thousand from neighboring villages, the youth club of Kalipur, being the only organized body besides the party in these villages, took over. As the club became dominated by scheduled caste tribal youth, the pioneering upper caste people slowly relinquished their hold in organizing the festival, and interestingly, they ceased to make any further donations. What did I just fucking say? Upper caste के social group में lower caste जब घुसेगा तभी अपर कास्ट वहां से कल्टी मार लेगा और अपना कुछ अलग एक्सक्लूसिविटी बना लेगा, क्योंकि द गेम गाइज इज एक्सक्लूसिविटी. हमको सबको एजी कूल एक्सक्लूसिव क्लब में घुसना है और कुछ नहीं है कास्टिज्म. यही है भीत, यही है बेसिस ऑफ कास्ट बेस्ड बैड बिहेवियर. इसके ऊपर से कितना डिग्री ऑफ बैड बिहेवियर होगा वो डिपेंड करता है तुम्हारा लॉ कितना चुतिया है और जो पार्टी इन पावर है वो सोशलिस्ट है कि नहीं. ठीक है, ये है बेसिस. एक्सक्लूसिव क्लब्स, एक्सक्लूसिव कॉर्पोरेट गिल्ड्स. ओके, तो अच्छा, तो तुम्हें मेरे जैसा मेकअप करना आता है? भोसरी के मैं मेकअप करना छोड़ दूंगा. आई विल ड्रेस अप लाइक अ होमलेस गाय. ओके, like what high status white people these days do. Okay, black people are going on, highly educated black people are trying to dress up in suits. White people on the other hand, white richest 4th 5th generation millionaire kids are dressing up like they are fucking homeless people. Okay, तुम्हें क्रिकेट पसंद है, आई एम नाउ एन इंग्लिश प्रीमियर लीग फैन. तुम्हें रॉक म्यूजिक, तुम्हें बंगाली रॉक म्यूजिक आने लगा है, मुझे अब इंग्लिश रॉक म्यूजिक सुनना है. ओके, दिस इज द फैक्टर. ओके, तुम काली पूजा ऑर्गेनाइज करोगे भोसरी के, हम ऑर्गेनाइज करके तुम्हें इनवाइट नहीं करेंगे, तो रखो तुम्हारा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन तुम्हारे पास, डोनेशन भी रखो, अपने आप से ढूंढ लो. सी, इट्स ऑल कनेक्टेड एवरीवेयर. इट्स द सेम काइंड ऑफ बिहेवियर. इसको तुम एक मिसैंथ्रोपिक वेगन के पीओवी से तुम इसको बोल सकते हो, यस ह्यूमंस आर सो इवल. बट हमारा आर्ग्यूमेंट यहां पे ये है कि यस ह्यूमंस आर इन जनरल evil and have these kind of stupidities and maybe assholiness. Maybe there can be argued that it probably benefits such hierarchies in some ways. But who the fuck solidifies these things and who the fuck recommends these things? Only Hinduism. तो ये हर जगह पे हर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कैसे होता है? ओके, कौन से राजा मनु पढ़ के कोई बंगाली अपर कास्ट ने बोला कि नहीं अब मैं बंगाली रॉक नहीं सुनूंगा, नहीं अब मैं क्रिकेट नहीं देखूंगा, अब मैं फुटबॉल देखना चालू करूंगा? ये कैसे हो रहा है? दैट इज द आर्ग्यूमेंट which unfortunately a lot of Hindutwadis are not getting, क्योंकि they have been trained in the last 5-10 years and people who have been Hindutwadis for much longer than that to blame it all on the British, who of course deserve blame, but not in the ways they think. So as the club became dominated by scheduled caste tribal youth, the pioneering upper caste people slowly relinquished their hold in organizing the festival, and interestingly they ceased to make any further donations. Lol. Thus, the Mahishos of Madhupur were denied their leading role in the festival that eventually turned into a Sholoana festival of Kalipur, a village numerically dominated by the lower caste and tribal people. Okay, gigantic footnotes. Let's see. तो हितेश रंजन सान्याल का बुक सोशल मोबिलिटी इन वेस्ट बंगाल में बोला गया है कि these 3 castes are also called Aprisho Shudro. Okay, Ausprisho Shudro in the caste hierarchy of Bengal as defined by Risley, who states in Bengal the castes are divided into 2 main groups, the Brahmins and the Shudras. Yeah, what I was talking about in the beginning. The latter is further divided into 4 subclasses indicating their status as regards food and water, कि कौन क्या food and water के साथ कैसा उनका एसोसिएशन है, कैसा एक्सेस है और किस तरह से उसका कंजम्पशन पैटर्न है. Which is A, the Sat Shudra group includes such castes as the Caste and Naboshakhas, the Shodgop, etc. B, then come the Jolocharonio Shudras, or Jolocharonio, I don't know the exact pronunciation here, being those castes not technically belonging to the Naboshakha group, from whom Brahmins and members of the higher castes can take water. I know where this is from. This is from that exact paper we discussed. This was quoted in that paper by Hitesh Ranjan Shanal in the paper that we discussed in our live stream called How to Buy Your Caste. Okay, caste mobility Brahmin खुद ensure कर रहा था पैसे लेके, तो उसके लिए तुम उसको हरामी बोलो या फिर कास्ट मोबिलिटी का उसका अम्बेडकराइट बोलो, हमें क्या है? ट्रूथ क्या है? ट्रूथ है कि मोबिलिटी था, ब्राह्मण्स खुद उसको इंश्योर करते थे, बिकॉज इन सम कॉन्टेक्स्ट सम पीपल बेनिफिटेड फ्रॉम द रिजिड हायरार्कीज, इन सम पीपल everyone did not benefit. I mean, nobody benefited from those rigid hierarchies, but it is an inevitable, I think, natural tendency of humans to form exclusive groups and ensure such privileges go to your descendants as well. Then come the Jolocharanyo Shudras, being those castes not technically belonging to the Naboshakha group, from whom Brahmins and members of the higher castes can take water. Then follow the Jal Baboharjo Shudras. So the Sanskrit pronunciation would be Jal Vyavaharya Shudras, castes from whose hands a Brahman cannot take water. And D, और जहाँ पे we found out from a paper from Max Weber's book that ये सब चूतिया लॉज जब कोई बनाता है उसमें से चूतिया रिचुअल बैकडोर भी ब्राह्मण खुद बना लेता है बिकॉज ऑफ कन्वीनियंस, बिकॉज दीज थिंग्स विल बी ऑब्वियसली इनकन्वीनियंट. इमेजिन अ ब्राह्मण इज traveling somewhere and his water ended. Okay, his water is his stock of water is over. He's probably dying of thirst. So now if the only person around him who is a jal vyavaharya shudra who has the capacity to provide water to him, what is he going to do? Is someone's asceticism going to be, or is someone's austerity going to be to that extremity where he will absolutely forego his thirst and actually literally die on spot of thirst? Maybe one or two will. How many Brahmins will? तो तब वहां पे भोसरी के बैकडोर ढूंढो. Last stands. Okay, now the trad argument is, of course, that these things happened because of the different levels of degrees of hygiene that different social groups will obviously have access to. Fair enough. वो बाद में चला क्यों जब भोसरी के हर किसी के घर में साबुन आ गया? That's my question. वो कैसे चला? D. Last stands the Asprisya Shudra caste, whose touch is so impure as to pollute even the Ganges water, and their contact must be avoided. They are thus the untouchables. Risley, 1891, as quoted by G.S. Ghure in Features of the Caste System in Dipankar Gupta. Dipankar Gupta's paper also we discussed in the same context, where Dipankar Gupta shows that caste is kind of inevitable and probably has nothing to do with Hinduism, and in fact there was social mobility, and in fact Brahmins were giving forged genealogies to ensure caste mobility in return of money, and G.S. Ghure is called the father of sociology in India. Okay, in that Sanyal's work, Social Mobility in Bengal, Sanyal states, if they, the lower castes, are allowed to join the religious and social functions in the village, they are constrained to remain at the most disadvantageous position in the gathering. ठीक है, तो शायद पीछे से देखना होगा. ये भी काइंड ऑफ इनएविटेबल है इन अ वे, नो, कि तुम अगर कम पैसे का टिकट खरीदो कोई भी कॉन्सर्ट में, तुमको तो पीछे ही बैठना पड़ेगा. I have been to Eden twice. I have seen the bowler bowling from this side and the batsman hitting from this side. That's not the way to watch cricket. I was there only for the ambiance. I could not understand what was going on in the pitch. उसके लिए तो मुझे giant screen देखना पड़ा क्योंकि मैंने cheap seats खरीदे थे. Sholoana meant something belonging to the whole village community. Hence, in the Sholoana festival, all the communities had equal rights to participate. Sholoana basically means sola ana, okay, ana the currency, okay. But it did not happen previously when upper caste domination was more explicit in the village. Yeah. But in the contemporary period, with the assertion of the lower castes in different fields, they could no more be segregated from the Sholoana festivals, क्योंकि upper caste में भी बहुत कौमी आगे है जिनको लगता है कि नहीं वो उनका आम्बेडकराइट टॉकिंग पॉइंट्स भी है, मगर by and large Casteism नहीं गया. I'm Shastri Singh, Dada, do you think these practices are local to Bengal, or do you find such conveniences among upper castes in other regions? Some way or the other, तो मेरे ख्याल से हर जगह पे होगा, I'm Shastri, because these are inevitable behaviors. Now I'm including in that things like social clubs, like the Calcutta Club kind of things as well. Okay. So if we are talking about exactly these castes doing those same things to those lower castes who are traditionally also lower castes, and exactly in this way, which is in a way that has nothing to do with Hinduism, okay, that probably happens today only in West Bengal. And I don't know much about the South. Probably happens in the South as well, because even with Dravidianism, casteism has really not gone away. But what happens in UP Bihar is the solidified cosplaying, fancy dress competition of past status hierarchies, none of which have anything to do with Hinduism. That I asked you a question earlier. Okay, let me check. The way Punjabis are converting to Christianity, this was probably not your question. What was the question? Yeah. Why do the Kolkata upper class tend to visit Shantiniketan once every year? Bye. अरे यार कतो केस खा गया मैं. So I love this question. I really want to say everything I wish I could say everything I want to say. Why has it turned into a ritual almost? Okay, so the non-Bengal is here. He's asking why the upper classes or you will notice mainly upper castes of Kolkata, tend to visit Shantiniketan, Bolpur mainly, where Rabindranath Thakur's university was founded, once every year during the Paush Mash, during the Paush Mela. Why has it turned into a ritual almost? Okay. That is so annoying to me that I can't think where to begin this answer with. Okay. Not the question. That occurrence, that phenomenon is so cringeworthy to me. सबको कुछ ना कुछ क्रिंजवर्दी लगता है. मुझे भाई ये क्रिंजवर्दी लगता है कि तुम ये एक फेक सबॉल्टर्निज्म, एक फेक एसेटिसिज्म, एक फेक सॉलिडारिटी विद द पुअरर मासेस के तौर पे तुम बोलपुर जाके नाचा गाना कर रहे हो. ठीक है, वहां पे बाउल के साथ शायद मतलब नेगोशिएट भी करोगे कि अच्छा एक बाउल हमने सुन लिया. ओके, वो बाउल को शायद भोजपुरी के कुछ गाना वाना आता भी नहीं है, उसका दो तारा ट्यून भी नहीं है, एक तारा ट्यून भी नहीं है, गाने में एक नोट नहीं लग रहा है, मगर वो बाउल को भी पता है कि ये गांडू लोग तो आए हैं सिर्फ ताकि हमारा गाना सुन के कोलकाता जाके वापस जाके बोल सके कि देखो हमने ऑथेंटिक बंगाली कल्चर थोड़ा एकदम फर्स्ट हैंड एक्सपीरियंस करके आया हम. और इनको भी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है बाउल के म्यूजिक के साथ, क्योंकि उनको भी सिर्फ तस्वीर खींचना है. तो इट्स सॉर्ट ऑफ अ नाइस कोलैबोरेशन गोइंग ऑन. बट द मेन अनोइंग पार्ट ऑफ इट ऑल is the subalternism, the fake solidarity, the fake asceticism, okay, that I associate with you people, you masses. और ये करने का जो चाह है, ये करने का चाह either was created by communism, or since communism came, these चाह among the Bengali people got exacerbated. I think there it exists among all Indians to some extent, to most Indians in some extent. And this is where I would like to jump on a bit of a high horse and say that I am not like everyone. I am not like Vivek Ramaswamy, nor am I like a rickshaw puller. I don't know what kind of hard work Vivek Ramaswamy has put into his educations, nor did I have his privilege. I don't know what kind of hardships rickshaw pullers face, nor do I know what kind of social freedoms he gets. Okay. Because there is something called middle class modality, upper caste modality, constraints which don't apply to lower class and lower caste people. Okay, so I am never going to like Bengali folk music just because it's sung by poor people. I dislike Bengali folk music, and I'm not ashamed of saying that. Most people listen to Bengali folk music because they want to come across as that fake subaltern cosplayer. Okay, because other than their gathering with their other upper caste commie friends, they probably never listen to Bengali folk music. Bengali folk music is the museum artifact of subalternists in Bengal, and then these fuckers who study Marx all day also get to hate rock music and metal music with the accusation that first of all it's noisy, etc., it's a product of American imperialism, capitalism, etc., and it's Western somehow. It is of course theoretically Western. And this is why I like that argument of Rupam Islam, the founder of the band Fossils, which is the most successful Bengali rock band in the history of Indian rock music. It's probably the most successful rock band in the history of Indian rock music, and which is the only group of musicians in West Bengal, only band in West Bengal who makes a living by doing original music. Every member of that band makes their living only by doing original music. So in their sort of interview DVD, which came along with their third album, Mission F, about 15 years back, there Rupam made this brilliant point, which was indirectly a sort of an anti-subalternism, anti-fake subalternism point. Okay, where he was being asked that he was not asked directly by an interviewer, but they were discussing that we get this accusation of aping the West and stuff, copying what's happening in the West and doing that in Bengali language. Why don't you have authentic Bengali culture to do? Why don't you take a folk song and put the Western instruments like drum and guitar and then get called an Eastern band? Why do you have to do Western melody like rock music and use those same instruments like drum and guitar, and then I get to call you Western? What the fuck? So Rupam said So if we do rock music, we are aping the West. But if I do folk music, I don't get called, I don't get accused of aping bowls. Why is that? If I'm a guy sitting in Kolkata, I have no idea of the life in America, nor do I know the life of bowls in the villages of fucking Bolpur. तो जहां का भी म्यूजिक मैं करूं, that will be based on research and me liking that genre. तो you can like folk music, I like rock music. तो मैं रॉक म्यूजिक कर रहा हूं और तुम फोक म्यूजिक कर रहे हो, मगर तुम फोक म्यूजिक करके सोच रहे हो कि तुम बड़े अचानक एकदम इंडियन नेशनलिस्ट बन गए, एकदम बंगाली फोक कल्चर के एकदम पास आ गए. लेकिन चूतिया तुम वीकेंड में एक बार जाते हो, शायद 6 महीने में एक बार जाते हो विलेजेस में कोई बाउल गाना सुनने. बाउल लाइफ के साथ, बाउल लाइफ का फिलोसॉफी के साथ तुम्हारा कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है. बाउल लाइफ के फिलोसॉफी का शायद तुमने एक बुक पढ़ा है, ओके. और तुम बाउल का जो पॉवर्टी है वो भी तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा सहन करना. बाउल का जो लाइफस्टाइल है, जो वैगाबॉन्ड लाइफस्टाइल है, वो भोसड़ी के तुम नहीं कर पाओगे. ठीक है, किसी दोस्त के घर एसी 10 मिनट देर में चला जाए तो तुम्हारा मतलब टेस्टिकल्स दिमाग में उठ जाता है. मगर तुम ऑथेंटिक बंगाली सबल्टन हो क्योंकि तुम बोलपुर में जाके पौष मेला में बाउल म्यूजिक सुनते हो. ये है वो उस अपर कास्ट कौमी बंगालियों का, टाटास ग्रुप का चुतियापा. Most Shantiniketan bowls are fake. No shit about mystic ways. They just take money from tourists. Exactly. वो टूरिस्ट को भी कुछ आता जाता है नहीं ऑथेंटिक बाउल से, और वो फेक बाउल को भी कुछ आता जाता नहीं है ऑथेंटिक बाउल से. तो ये एक मजेदार कोलैबोरेशन है. Why were Pink Floyd anti-capitalist if they earned all money, fame by capitalism? ये तो एज ओल्ड प्रश्न है भाई. क्योंकि उनको लगता है they got some unfair advantage over some poor bands from around the poverty-stricken countries, I guess. Punjabi literature songs always glorifies poverty pre-partition era. पता नहीं क्यों. Asceticism, fake asceticism. देखो मैं कितना गरीब हूं. अच्छा, रिमेंबर दैट टीवीएफ का एक बहुत पुराना टीवीएफ या ऑल इंडिया बकचोद का एक बहुत पुराना स्किट था अरविंद केजरीवाल पे. जब अरविंद केजरीवाल नया आ रहा था सीन पे, तो दे यूज्ड टू से दिस दैट that संस्कारी uncle from all the films, he is coming as a spirit and advising Arvind Kejriwal, grooming him, mentoring him and saying थोड़ा और गरीब लगना है अरविंद, थोड़ा और गरीब अरविंद, थोड़ा और गरीब. So that is that fake asceticism. Thank you for this good question, brilliant question, Abhinav, and thank you for making us digress to a long route, a long detour. Okay, let's get back to the paper now. अरे थोड़ा कॉफी भी पीने दो. Active participation in this festival therefore might indicate a movement in the social mobility of lower castes in the social religious hierarchy, where they assumed a key role in organizing a Sholwana Pujo, which had previously been the exclusive domain of the upper castes. In fact, social mobility was ultimately conceived in terms of acquiring a greater degree of purity. Here, the lower caste people were aiming for a greater degree of ritual purity, for socially validating the position of eminence earned by them. Recently, a few scheduled caste families were performing Saraswati Puja, worship of a Hindu goddess, in their own houses by employing the services of Brahmin priests who usually performed pujas in upper caste households and who were not supposed to attend rituals in the lower caste households in the village. Lol. In fact, the Brahmin who is supposed to serve the upper caste, so you see why this has nothing to do with Hinduism, because Brahmin है, तो कौन पूजा कर रहा है, इससे क्या है? उसको तो माँ सरस्वती से मतलब है. मगर सोसाइटी, सोशियो इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर्स, मेनली सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स कहां पे आ जाता है, विच कैनॉट बी जस्ट accused हिंदुइज्म ऑफ फॉलोइंग. वहां पे इसको ये भी फॉलो करना है कि नहीं माँ सरस्वती इसके घर में है तो एक अलग इंपॉर्टेंस है, उसके घर में है तो अलग इंपॉर्टेंस है. तो प्रॉक्सिमिटी ऑफ पावर, तो माँ सरस्वती का भी प्रॉक्सिमिटी ऑफ पावर को लेकर यहां पे डिबेट हो रहा है. So, in their own houses by employing services of Brahmin priests who usually performed pujos in upper caste households and who were not supposed to attend rituals in the lower caste households in the village. In fact, The Brahmin who is supposed to serve the upper caste along with the clean Shudra is usually called clean Brahmin and would pollute his caste if he acts as priest to the Antyaj. The clean Brahmin here were serving the Antyaj, indicating that society in general is gradually approving their claim to upward social mobility and might be another marker in the efforts of the lower castes to quote unquote move up in the ritual hierarchy. There is still disparity, however, between the upper castes and scheduled caste communities. There remains an aberration in the stratified rural society where the Bhadralok Chotolok division has persisted with considerable vigor, even though the lower castes continue to play increasingly important roles in a social function. Now, all of these kinds of researches have been done only in villages. ऐसा research एक भाई कोई कोलकाता पे के ऊपर करो तब असली मजा होगा. I have found it common that the upper caste people of the village look down upon the scheduled caste peoples as chotologs. The scheduled caste people are also address the higher caste people as babus or bhadraloks. These socially significant terminologies somehow reflect the existence of the traditional elite subaltern relationship. Traditional elite subaltern relationship. Elite और subaltern के बीच में जो traditional relationship है on the basis of domination subordination in the contemporary period. Footnote बोल रहा है कि Sanyal describes, Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal describes that the Brahmins of Bengal are divided between the two major categories, namely clean and unclean. A clean Brahmin will fall from the high position if he acts as the priest in the house or temple of a person belonging to the unclean Shudra castes. The unclean Brahmins serving the unclean Shudras are known as Varna Brahman. Unclean Brahmin serving the unclean Shudras is known as Varna Brahmin. Okay. अच्छा इंटरेस्टिंग ये टिडबिट है, ये बाद में काम आएगा. Abhay saying also there is a huge difference between the statuses of urban UC and rural UC. Upper caste, yeah, exactly why these sorts of researches now need to be done on the city. कोई कर ही नहीं रहा है. Upper caste people are reluctant to visit scheduled caste tribal hamlets and generally do not accept food in lower caste houses. Higher caste women never visit scheduled caste tribal paras and avoid close contact with the lower castes and tribal people. My hunch is that they don't do these things in the Kolkata area because वहां पे तो ये चीजें नहीं मिलेंगे ना, कि जो कि थोड़ा easier to find है in the villages, के इससे हाथ से नहीं खाएंगे, इसके घर में नहीं जाएंगे एक्सेट्रा. वो सब तो कोलकाता में नहीं मिलेगा. कोलकाता में जो मिलेगा वो बोलने से तो हिंदुत्व, राइट विंगर और कौमी एक साथ उनका मतलब टेम्पर लूज हो रहा है. वो चीजें कोई रिसर्च करने को तैयार ही नहीं है. The laboring scheduled caste tribal people wash their dishes after taking food and drink in the upper caste households, while the economically and socially established lower caste persons, such as school teachers, are not usually required to do so. Wow. The children of upper caste families are reluctant to eat a meal alongside scheduled caste children as served in the village integrated child development scheme center. Though surprisingly, parents often come to the center to collect the nutritious food meant for children, particularly on egg day. Children of upper caste families mostly take midday meals in the village primary school, usually sitting separately from scheduled caste children. This is not an isolated observation in West Bengal, as is shown by the survey report by Pratichi India Trust, as mentioned by Ghosh. Interesting. देखो बंगाल कितना डिफरेंट है ना यूपी बिहार से, ये सब भी होता है. दिस पेपर इज फ्रॉम 2008 गाइस. तब बोला जा रहा है कि बंगाल के विलेजेस में अपर कास्ट बच्चे स्कूल के मिड डे मील्स लोअर कास्ट बच्चों के साथ नहीं खा रहे हैं. ये है बंगाल. Upper caste people, even young ones, rarely have friends within the scheduled caste and tribal communities. The friend circles in the village were constituted largely on the basis of caste groups. The people of higher castes, Brahmins and Casteism, seem not to have any prejudice in mingling with the Mahishos, the dominant middle caste people in the village, and vice versa. Though generally in the addas, the chatting centers, people of the same caste were seen to flock together. तो देखो ये यूज किया जाएगा कॉमिस के हाथों कि देखो कास्टिज्म टूट गया है बंगाल में. Even though on the surface all seems well, there exists a strong undercurrent of caste feeling where the erstwhile dominating caste Caestos look down upon the Mahishos, terming them chashas, the cultivators, farmers, in a derogatory sense, and the Mahishos undermine the Caestos as lazy and worthless. So this sentence, even though on the surface all seems well, there exists a strong undercurrent of caste feeling, यही टॉलीवुड पे अप्लाई होता है. These people are reluctant to allow intercaste marital relationships. when a caste unemployed youth married a girl from a neo-rich Mahishya family, the parents of the girl vehemently opposed the marriage. Yeah, पार्वेनु तो कोई न्यूली रिच होगा भी तब भी प्रॉब्लम होगा, तो इसके लिए एक जनरेशन कम से कम टाइम लगता है ये सब जाने के लिए. और वैसे भी ये एक एग्जांपल है, ये हर कोई कास्ट फैमिली नहीं करेगा. वैसे बंगाल में मैंने तो देखा है कि कम्युनिस्ट फैमिलीज भी, कम्युनिस्ट पेरेंट्स भी एक्टिवली कास्ट के बेसिस पे मैरिज करना एनकरेज करते हैं, इवन विदाउट द इनएविटेबिलिटी ऑफ द सिमिलरिटीज ऑफ स्टेटस ग्रुप्स with the in group of same traditional caste. Okay, उसके बगैर भी सेम कास्ट में मैरिज करना बहुत सारे कॉमीज प्रेफर करते हैं. तो ये तो और भी 10-15 साल पहले का रिसर्च है, तब तो ये और भी अंडरस्टैंडेबल होगा. तो बट दैट शोज दैट where Bengal actually is and where we think Bengal is. So when a caste unemployed, so this might not really be an anecdotal evidence. When a caste unemployed youth married a girl from a neo-rich Mahishya family, the parents of the girl vehemently opposed the marriage. Yeah, and the idea is that they would rather prefer an Ashraf Muslim than a newly rich or even a lower caste person from the same status group. I know commies like these. So Integrated Child Development Scheme, ICDS, is a central government scheme for every village with 6 goals to provide nutrition, immunization, health checks, identification of handicapped children at the initial stage, providing pre-primary informal education and education on health and nutrition. Imsha Sri, what you are saying about Maharashtra is actually because of the थोड़ा बहुत कैपिटलिज्म भी है और बहुत 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 स्ट्रॉन्ग दलित पॉलिटिक्स भी है. वेस्ट बंगाल में ये दोनों ही नहीं है, उसका ही रिजल्ट है ये सब. I'll discuss a paper in a few days by a very, very famous social science scholar called Partho Chatterjee, who is sort of worshipped by commies, but even he points out how or why there is a lack of Dalit politics in West Bengal. He points that out as a flaw. Of course, he recommends that, or at least he kind of hopes that Dalit politics might one day get rejuvenated in West Bengal by collaborating with Muslims. That is something we'll have to ignore, but he does point this out, and I intend to discuss that paper as well. Providing pre-primary informal education and education on health and nutrition. The children are served eggs once. ये तो हमको सबको पता है, ये तो बाहर वालों के लिए ये सब footnotes है. So the instances from Kalipur are quite revealing to understand the degree of caste feeling prevailing in rural West Bengal. ये 2008 through 2012 का पेपर है. Even among the supporters and activists of the principal ruling party of the state, the Communist Party of India. ये पेपर हर एंटी कास्ट एंटी हिंदुत्ववादी कॉमी के मुंह पे मारो जाके. I met Jibon Pal of a rich landed Mahishya family whilst traveling the village road to visit the Panchayat Pradhan chief and village scheduled caste leader Khogen Malik. He advised me to meet other party leaders of the upper caste instead, labeling Khogen as faltu, worthless, who did not know anything about the village. This showed his contempt for the scheduled caste representative in the panchayat. Now, is it because he was lower caste? देखो भाई इतना तो हमको एग्जांपल मिल गया कि it's probably because he's lower caste only, but in 2024, if it happens even today in some context in Kolkata with a scheduled caste from a caste or from even from any upper caste, it will probably because the overall lack of cultural and social capital that the scheduled caste person has. I mean his lack of social and cultural capital, not because he consciously is a scheduled caste. वो सब fallacies है. तो बट ये जो एग्जांपल्स हमको दिख रहा है यहाँ पे उससे तो लगता है कि ये बिकॉज ये शेड्यूल कास्ट था इसीलिए उसको फालतू बोला जा रहा है यहाँ पे. इट इज वर्दी ऑफ नोट दैट जीवन पाल इज अ मेंबर ऑफ द कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ऑफ इंडिया, द लार्जेस्ट लेफ्ट पार्टी इन इंडिया. जीवन's words about Khogen reflect the caste prejudice of an upper caste person that debarred him accepting a scheduled caste person as leader of the village. And CPIM में नॉन ब्राह्मण बुद्धि कास्ट तो तुम ढूंढ के निकालो significant leader. The alignment of power in the locality seems, and which is why they were in power. Any party who does not fuck with the dominant caste structures of India will remain in power forever and after. The alignment of power in the locality seems also to have a bearing on his attitude towards scheduled caste Pradhan, who was crucially dependent on the higher caste party leaders, both in managing village affairs and running the panchayat, discussed in more detail below. Another instance was the attitude expressed by Madhabi, wife of the village party leader Manoj Datto. Datto is Caste, right? Who ridiculed the scheduled caste tribal assertion attained during the left front rule of the last couple of decades. Okay. I met her just before the state assembly elections in 2006, and commenting on the impending elections, she said, quote, "My husband was saying that in the coming elections the government could fall. Indeed, a change is needed. It might seem, oh, she got a hunch that the government might fall, and it worked out." I sound more like Jordan Peterson than I sound like Madhavi here. "Indeed, a change is needed. It might seem an unusual comment from me, but I must say that the Chotoloks would be cut to size once the government is changed. These people have become so adamant. These people. What do you mean, these people? That they don't care about anyone. काहे भोसरी के हमारे exclusive group में घुस गए? They can't be taken to task even if they don't work in the field properly. Acha, communist upper caste is going to teach work ethic to another commie lower caste person. ये क्या crossover है Marvel का? You must realize what happens if the shoe is placed on the head. Oh fuck! मेरा चैनल डिमोनेटाइज हो जाएगा ये सब सेंटेंस कोट करने की वजह से. They can't be taken to. You must realize what happens if the जूतों के माथाয় तुल्ले की है. You fuck! Shoe is placed on the head. One should be kept in the arena earmarked for him or her in the society. Anyhow, all the mental works have still to be done by us. She is saying the quiet part out loud. Can they do such works? भोसरी के कुछ है कि नहीं? Do they have the brains? The persons from scheduled caste tribal communities are now becoming panchayat members and even panchayat pradhan. But who are performing the real works of panchayat other than people like us? End quote. Holy shit. Fuck. Oh, this is a hit job on CPIM. But I guess Madhavi Roy, Dayabati Roy, the author of this paper, would not say that this is an attack on Marxism and socialism in general, which we could argue. She will probably say that, therefore, real socialism has not been tried. This is just how CPIM behaved. The names of the characters that appear in the following pages are fictitious to protect true identities. Okay? Though Madhavi was active in the Mohila Samiti, Women's Front of the Communist Party of India Marxist, she even hailed the possibility of a defeat of the party in the impending elections in the expectation that the Chotoloks would be cut to size. Oh, fuck. So her exact argument is that she kind of hopes that CPIM loses so that these Chotoloks who have gained authority, at least in name, in the panchayats by being a part of CPIM, at least their powers will go away. This is exactly what I was talking about. कि देखो पंचायत में टॉप में हम थे, हमारे एक्सक्लूसिव क्लब था, ये लोग सीपीआईएम मार्क्सिज्म चुदा के हमारे घर में हमारे एक्सक्लूसिव क्लब में आ गए हैं, तो अब मेरे क्लब को मारो गोली. ओके, तब मुझे क्रिकेट पसंद नहीं है, तब मुझे बंगाली रॉक म्यूजिक पसंद नहीं है. दिस इज दैट सेम थिंग अगेन. तब मुझे कम्युनिज्म भी पसंद नहीं है, तब मुझे अपने पार्टी को भी जिताना नहीं है. अगर lower caste people get to my exclusive group where I used to be the sole edgy educated commie. Look at this gigantic paragraph. Insane paragraph. Fuck. Madhabi, an active member of the Mohila Samiti, Women's Front of the Communist Party of India Marxist, she hails the possibility that a defeat of the party in the impending selections in the defeat of the party in the impending election होगा, क्योंकि अच्छा ही होगा, क्योंकि छोटे लोग का थोड़ा wings काट दिया जाएगा. She reflected the general upper caste viewpoint that the scheduled caste tribal people were unable to do mental or intellectual work such as running the panchayat, which had to be done practically by upper caste people. Here, by mentioning the position of a person in the society, she obviously meant the caste position stipulated by the Varna or Jati system of the Hindu religion. This showed the existence of caste consciousness entrenched in a lady so closely associated with the Communist Party of India Marxist. Even one landless agricultural laborer, Kesto of the Mahisho caste, differentiated himself from the scheduled caste and tribal laborers he used to toil with. According to him, the lower caste people did not know any manner, and hence he could not find a friend amongst them. In this instance, उसका मैनर्स अलग है, तो उसका मैनर ही नहीं है, तो अब मैं कैसे दोस्त बनाऊं इनको भाई. पियर बोर्तियो कहां पे है? In this instance, the caste feeling in him was strong enough to deter him to integrate with his class brethren. Oh fuck, हमारा एक और argument validate हो गया. देखो, and to my credit, I'd found out this paper on my own. Mysterious Sociologist did not send this to me, but it's everything Mysterious Sociologist has been arguing from our channel. देखो, क्लास सेम हो गया है, फिर भी कुछ आता जाता नहीं है, क्योंकि सोशल और कल्चरल कैपिटल तो अलग ही रह गया. तो तुम अगर अभी कोई रिक्शा पुलर या फिर लेट्स से हाउ कास्ट मेटाफोरिकली ऑपरेट्स टुडे, योर प्रेसिडेंसी क्लासमेट, if he is Bihari, he'll have to listen to Bengali folk when he hangs out with his upper caste Bengali friends from presidency. Ridmajhare. Among the scheduled caste communities of Kalipur, there were 3 caste groups: Bagdis, Dules, and Muchis. The Bagdis were more dependent. Actually, remember a few days back I was saying that in Bengal, caste works in a particular way, and in Mumbai, caste works in another way, which is the Islamicate culture. And actually, Hindu Vichardhara ma'am had actually pointed out that that sort of thing is what happens in Punjab as well. The fascination with Urdu and the Islamicate culture, as described by historian Hodgson, Marshall Hodgson. So the two times I went to Delhi and actually stayed more than a few hours was when I went for a band competition. Okay. To attend a semi-final and then the finals of a band competition that Z Business of all people did, where we, a metal band, went. And the only reason we were allowed to reach the finals was because the judges were Subir Malik of Parikrama, and that girl who sang, no, she was only the judge only in the finals, and another member from Euphoria. Anyway, so in Delhi we found a similarity with the Bengali bands of Kolkata, which is that they have obsession with one genre, and because they are basically lazy fucks, they have obsession with one song from that one genre. So what I was talking about, the Bengali folk obsession of upper caste commies of Bengal, that mainly comes down to Bokul Phul, or which is more popular, Ridmajhare Rakhibo Chhede Dibo Na. Okay. And the more sexual and more slow tempo you can sing it, somehow that's more authentic. And these days people sing it in absolutely sexualized ways. Okay, now people can of course say that I'm a pervert, therefore I think that is sexual, but no, if you sing it as if you are moaning, then yes, it's sexual. That is absolutely sexual. That's not how folk music is usually sung. But what I noticed in Delhi was everyone is obsessed with Sufi rock. Okay, so every fucking band had a rock version of Damadam Mastakalandar. Yes, I don't know if it has changed in Delhi by now. I went in 2011. Okay, back then every fucking band in Delhi was doing a rock version of Mastakalandar. That seems to be the epitome of Indian music, and that is my problem with these low IQ, low life directors and producers of Bengal, Tollywood, and Mumbai. That whenever I try to incorporate some Western classical epic orchestration kinds of things, Hans Zimmer kind of things, which I really like and which I really excel at, these fuckers will tell me that this is too Western. And then my PTSD of commie uncles telling me I'm too Western for liking metal music gets triggered. Because इनका इंडियन म्यूजिक का ज्ञान कहां पे है? या तो रिदमाझारे राखीबो छेड़े दिबो ना, और बॉलीवुड, or going to Doverland classical concert once in their lifetime and discussing what the fuck that rag is. और हमको बोल रहा है कि नहीं नहीं ये ज्यादा वेस्टर्न हो गया है, इंडियन करो. इंडियन का मतलब है चुतिया बॉलीवुड के तरह कुछ करो. In this instance, the caste feeling in him was strong enough to deter him to integrate with his class brethren. Yes, Anushilan Shomiti is pointing out something very important. All the Tumi in Puja Robindranath Sangit is dedicated to God, not a lover. And actually, someone had brilliantly pointed this out. I think it was a sort of a commie-minded scholar of the Ramakrishna Mission. In a speech in Ramakrishna Mission, he was saying that probably he was the one who said it, that the brilliance of Rabindranath is that the songs he dedicated to God sound like romantic songs, and the songs he actually dedicated to a lover sound like devotional songs. That's the brilliance of Rabindranath, I think. Akla Cholode has, it's kind of fallen out of favor these days. मेटामॉर्फोसिस अगर वो केजीएफ जैसा म्यूजिक भी चाहता, वो भी मैं करने को राजी हूं। इनका प्रॉब्लम है कि ये केजीएफ जैसा म्यूजिक करने को बोलेंगे जब केजीएफ ऑलरेडी चूतिया हो चुका है। केजीएफ आने से पहले अगर ये म्यूजिक मैं सजेस्ट करता, बिकॉज it's not like KGF came up with that genre, right? That's the epic hybrid orchestral music it's called. It came from basically the video game world, which Hans Zimmer also incorporated in his music. तब नहीं होगा। केजीएफ ने किया है, अब ये इंडियन म्यूजिक बन गया है, अब तुम करो और कल सुबह तक भेजो, और उसके बाद 5 दिन तक उसका करेक्शन चलते रहेगा, इंस्टेड ऑफ गिविंग यू द टाइम टू that it would actually take you to create a KGF like music. Can they make music like South? If not, then don't talk about Indian classical music. Yeah. Indian karo, Western mat karo. Okay. Among the scheduled caste communities of Kalipur, there were 3 caste groups: Bagdis, Dules, and Muchis. The Bagdis were more dependent on sharecropping in the lands of the Babus, for example, the upper caste Caestas. They were accused by the tribal people of being close to the Babus traditionally, not supporting the struggles against the landed gentry unequivocally in the 1960s. These are the Congressy Babus, okay? And of enjoying more benefits from the panchayat and the party. Lol. तो सीपीएम का स्ट्रगल भी सपोर्ट नहीं करना पड़ा सीपीएम पावर आने से पहले तक, और सीपीएम जब पावर में आ गया, ये लोग सीपीएम में घुस के टॉप पोजीशंस में भी चले गए। क्या जीनियस है। Noticeably, many of the Bagdi sharecroppers had not registered as Borgadars, even though they were close to the Communist Party Marxist during the left front regime. Rudd also observed that a certain caste from the scheduled caste category was favored in the process of consolidation of political power by the dominant party, whilst another caste in the same category was derided for striving for social mobility. The Dules were also dependent on sharecropping and agricultural labor, but left marginalized in the power structure, not having representation in the party and the panchayat. The Muchis, who were principally dependent on agricultural labor, were literally the marginal people segregated in the village away from all social and political activities. Very recently, they affirmed allegiance to the Communist Party of India Marxist. In Kodampur, also the conditions of houses varied widely according to caste habitations. The scheduled caste hamlets, though situated in close vicinity to the general caste habitations, were distinct by the wretched condition of their houses. Here, occasional floods caused the scheduled caste habitation to be more dilapidated. ये सब चीजें अभी भी है। पॉलिटिकल वायलेंस हो, रिलीजियस वायलेंस हो, नेचुरल कैलेमिटीज हो, सबसे ज्यादा विक्टिम है लोअर कास्ट आदमी इन वेस्ट बंगाल। आई एम स्टेटिंग एन एब्सोल्यूट स्टैटिस्टिकल फैक्ट. In comparison, the Mahishos and Goalas of Kodampur generally had well-built concrete houses, some of them having 2 stories. The Goalas were traditionally, now if they have become corrupt Trinamool Party Gundas, they probably have 3 stories by now. The Goalas were traditionally dependent on milk trading, and see, there's a free market of corruption in West Bengal today, so some of them might have gotten some help. But that does not mean that the upper castes did not do the corruption, so they might have built up 5 stories by now. The Goalas were traditionally, Goala means the Goel caste, okay? Goel surname. Dada, that ka for. Nandish, what do you mean? We may need simplified version like simplified Mandarin. Okay. That's the Goala. Okay. Avinav is saying, Dada, do you think hand pull rickshaw in Kolkata, symbol of casteism in the name of heritage? Why does it need to exist till date? Why do the upper castes call it heritage? My opinion is that if there is, I don't believe in sustaining anything just for the sake of it, unless it provides a service in the society. Same with a lot of most sports in the Olympics. So in the same way, if somehow it's a situation that the hand-drawn rickshaw puller somehow cannot afford a auto or even normal e-rickshaw and stuff, then it's good if he carries on with his hand-drawn puller. But I don't know if upper castes defend it, because the upper castes I know are so far left commies that they have usually said that it's an absolutely inhuman profession which must be actively made illegal by the government with government intervention, where I also have a problem that unless an e-rickshaw falls on his head magically, why should he give up this profession of his, which actually does have some customers even today? That's what I stand. या बैंड हो चुका है, हाँ बैंड होके तो अब उसको अगर टोटो मिला है पार्टी से तब ठीक है। अब पार्टी का तो पैसा नहीं है, वो टैक्स पेयर का ही पैसा है। दादा वी नीड अ सोशियोलॉजिकल स्टडी ऑन दिखावा कल्चर अमॉन्ग्स्ट कल्चरल एलिट्स। और कुछ साल रुको एम शास्त्री, आएगा आएगा सब आएगा ये सब। Many handful rickshaws are run by Biharis and it's slowly fading out too. Don't lose your sleep over it. Yeah, I don't know exactly, but we need to work on that. Okay, so they were less dependent on land, though their average land holding 0.8 acre was higher than the Mahishos 0.53 acre, betraying the caste-specific occupational preferences still prevalent in Hindu society. The Goalas were traditionally dependent on milk trading and had lately flourished in other businesses. They were less dependent. Goalas were less dependent on land, though their average land holding was higher than the Mahishos, betraying the caste-specific occupational preferences still prevalent in Hindu society. It should be noted that in this village, while a few scheduled caste families were solvent and possessing concrete houses, a considerable section of the Mahishos lived in poor conditions. Similar to Kalipur, here also the scheduled caste families in general suffered from a lack of sanitation, education, electricity, and access to safe drinking water. But contrary to Kalipur, some of the scheduled caste families in Kodampur enjoyed some amount of social prestige. Okay, scheduled caste families in general suffered from a lack of sanitation, education, electricity, and access to safe drinking water. But contrary to Kalipur, in Kodampur, they for some reason, it's Kodampur, right? I guess, yeah. Some of the scheduled caste families in Kodampuria enjoyed some amount of social prestige, perhaps due to their better economic conditions, having landed property, government jobs, and better educational background. Yeah, and ये एक दिन में नहीं हुआ था. At least एक generation लगा था, complete एक generation. As I entered Kodampur, and these are two small areas to discuss. So maybe the people of Kodampur were just better. They were just nicer people. ऐसा भी हो सकता है. एट लार्ज ये सब कैसे अप्लाई होगा? वहां पे हमको अर्बनाइजेशन एंड इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन एंड कैपिटलिज्म चाहिए, फ्री मार्केट्स चाहिए. एज आई एंटर्ड कोदमपुर एट द हाइट ऑफ द रीसेंट एंटी लैंड एक्विजिशन मूवमेंट, द कास्ट मीनिंग शिंगूर मूवमेंट, okay, the caste relations seem to have become fuzzy under the impact of the land movement. Most of the people in the village community initially responded in united defense of the land acquisition movement by the government, even though 80% of farmers had consented to giving away the land. Okay, they organized as a body to save the village agricultural land on which people of all castes depended crucially for their livelihood. The landless scheduled caste people were also affected because they lived off the land as agricultural laborers, sharecroppers or borgadars, registered or not, and cultivators on lease rent. So the lower caste Bagdis of the village united with the dominant caste Mahishos to serve on the Save Agricultural Land Committee. What was this called? Does anyone remember? Jomi Odhigrohan Moncho or something. Memories come back of me being a commie and hating this movement because I was that fake commie who was in favor of the factory, whereas the real commies who hated communism were against the factory. It was such a Marvel crossover again. Not only had the scheduled caste people joined the movement en masse, the village panchayat member belonging to the Bagdi caste also became one of its main leaders. Subsequently, a rift appeared among the village people as some of the landed persons agreed to offer their land for the Tata project, and some, mainly from the scheduled caste communities, joined the construction work in the project area as day laborers. Lol. In this situation, caste consciousness seems to have been superseded by economic considerations. Contrary to the case of village Kalipur, here Mahisho caste people praised the scheduled caste panchayat member Dhiren and had confidence in him. In fact, the two main leaders of the land movement in Kodampur were respectively Jagannath from the dominant Mahishto caste group and Dhiren from the Bagdi caste group. I guess we know the real names, but we are not going to be told today. Okay, the footnote clarifies for those of you who have forgotten. The state government decided to acquire nearly 1,000 acres of agricultural land in Shingur for a small car plant to be set up by Tata Motors. Almost the whole village agricultural land of Kodampur fell under the proposed industrial area. The villagers had been agitating against the acquisition when I visited the area. So you see, this was an official hit job from the academia of the entire world against CPIM, right at a very opportune moment. That CPIM seems to be a bad party after all. After all, this is not real socialism then. I guess time for us to finally say these things. Even though uske pehle 10-15 साल से हमने रॉस मलिक को ostracize कर दिया for criticizing CPIM. LOL. Holy shit. How evil are these people? And then this factory went to Gujarat. Obviously, Jagannath played a greater role in mobilizing Mahishya people in the land movement, whilst Dhiren persuaded the Bagdi people to participate in it. But as mobilization in the land movement cut across the caste line and was based on the solidarity of the village people, the emphasis in the social life of the village was on intercaste unity. It seemed that due to several factors in Kodampur, caste antagonism was not as sharp as in Kalipur. Okay. So the people of Kodampur are just better, I guess, or have other historical reasons for that. In the village club of Kodampur, Mahishwas closely mingled with the scheduled castes youths, and people from both castes took equal part in the day-to-day activities of the club. Even before becoming a Panchayat member, Dhiren, a graduate and a private tutor by profession, was all along active in the club and played a leading role in its activities. He wrote Jatra plays. Jatra means sort of those village plays, okay? जो कि छोटे एक alley में होता है. He wrote Jatra plays and club members acted in them. The Jatra plays were acclaimed in different places and the club received a number of prizes for good performance in drama competitions. Another scheduled caste person, Pradeep Bagh, the only doctor hailing from the village who was engaged in a government job as a block medical officer in East Medinipur district, played a significant role in patronizing the club in all its activities. Both Dhiren and Pradeep held long-term executive positions in the club. Had there been substantial caste animosity in the village, they probably would not have been accepted as patrons. It should be noted that the club was the main place for social gathering in the village, and often even elderly persons joined the adda, chatting in the club. Beside the road near the club, the elders of the village gathered morning and evening to exchange pleasantries and discuss politics and such like. Here also both Mahishwa and Bagdi people gathered regularly. Such open-air addas are very commonplace in both the rural and urban areas of West Bengal, and actually basically all around the rural places of India, I think, and even Mofusils. As we have seen in Kalipur, people belonging to different castes had their own addas and they rarely befriended the people of other castes. In particular, a mingling of upper caste people with scheduled caste people seemed quite unusual there. The only exception was a Caste youth in Kalipur, who played a leading role in organizing the youth club, which comprised members mainly from the scheduled caste tribal communities. Another key takeaway from this paper might be, whenever we are discussing upper castes behaving badly and stuff, see how less of a mention there is of actually Brahmins. But some people in India think the entire, let's say, the entire attack needs to be just towards Brahmins. And that's how you know they are not dishonest, they are not honest actors in this discourse. Jatra is a kind of a traditional drama acted on open stage. This kind of play has always been very popular in the villages of West Bengal. Okay, time for a bit of sip of coffee. अनुशीलन समिति, ये बीजेपी ने अगर फंड नहीं किया एकेडमिक्स इमीडिएटली, ये जिंदगी में नहीं होगा ये रिसर्च, ये और कुछ तरह से नहीं होगा और कोई फंड नहीं करेगा. विक्रम संपत शायद फंड कर देगा, उसका क्या लेजिटिमेसी होगा आई एम नॉट श्योर. Do jatras happen now in villages? Yeah, I think so. Unless they are replaced by orchestra, I do think jatras do happen. The absence of explicit caste prejudice in Kodampur might be due to both economic and social reasons. Although scheduled caste people in the village were not landless, and some scheduled caste families had both agricultural land and jobs. Dekho. But unlike in Kalipur, such families had not detached themselves from their own community and social life of the village. Rather, these families were very much identified with the joys and sorrows of village life. The case of Dr. Pradeep Bagh might be the revealing example in this regard. Though he worked outside the village and earned a good salary, he could not stay aloof from the new events of the village in the wake of the land acquisition movement. He supported it, and on occasion was tortured by the police and implicated with criminal charges. Yes, see, all these people opposed the Singur factory. Why? Nobody knows. Such roles on the part of an educated and well-established person help cement intercaste bonds in the strife-torn village. हाँ, और जो intercaste bond जिस तरह से था उस फॉर्म में भी सॉलिडिफाई हो गया क्योंकि वहां पे इकोनॉमिक डिस्ट्रप्शन नहीं हुआ जो कि ये शिमूर फैक्ट्री कर सकता था. It seemed that the social involvement by scheduled caste persons who had a higher educational background and economic solvency played a definite role in giving the Bagdi caste their social dignity. On the other hand, the Mahishos in Kodampur were neither traditional landowner nor could they gather substantial agricultural land in the post-land reform period, as was the case of Mahishos in Kalipur. But it is evident that in the recent past in Kodampur, a tiny section of Mahishos and Bagdis could uplift their status by improving their economic conditions. While most of the families from both castes remained miserably dependent on a small amount of land or on sharecropping or laboring on another's land. Since most of the families of both castes remained economically depressed, the upward mobility of middle castes and sometimes lower castes as well due to their economic uplift and imitation of the upper caste rituals and customs as observed by Shah was not the case in Kodampur. Imitation to karna hi hoga. The Ghosh families of Bedabedi, Ghosh is also the Goyal caste. The Ghosh families of Bedabedi, a neighboring village, had owned most of the village land of Kodampur since the colonial days, and both the Mahishos and the Bagdis had sharecropped in their lands for a considerable period, some for generations. It is noteworthy that among the 51 sharecroppers in the village, 28 belonged to the scheduled caste communities, 20 to the Mahisho, and 3 to the Goalas. Now, a footnote says, Ghanashyam Shah says, Caste and Democratic Politics in India, नाम के book पे, के Shah argues by referring to Srinivas, though the upper castes try to maintain their higher status, the middle and lower castes have successfully improved status. Catch up खेलते हैं. With improvement of their economic condition, a dominant section of some of the low castes, including groups that were at one time treated as untouchables, imitated the customs and norms of the upper caste residing in their vicinity. Guys, I talked about this so many months back. Remember when I brought up the example of North Calcutta style of celebrating Durga Puja? The Lalpar Shada Shadi, the red abir on the face, the Dhunuchi Nach, in the exact ways that North Kolkata upper caste, mainly Kayasthos, celebrate Durga Puja. That is emulated all across Bengal, which is why वो भी बहुत जल्दी change हो जाएगा. And my Brahmin rock musician, sort of a caste heterodox friend, remember I told the story that he was asked by a TV channel to perform with his band in an unplugged way to celebrate Durga Puja, but he was asked to dress up in that exact same way, which he refused because he said, without knowing sociology at all, which should be fucking common sense, which most people lack, that not everyone celebrates Durga Puja that way. That's a very specific way of celebrating Durga Puja, by dressing up in that way, by having that get up. And I don't associate or relate with those people, so I won't. Then the channel refused, and so he said, fuck you, and left the studio. But he's comes from a devout Shakta family, by the way, and he absolutely does his Kali Puja with all his devotion and complete duty and stuff. It's a very significant Kali Puja. It's on a poncho mundo moncho as well. Most of the Mahisha families in the village were marginal farmers with an average landholding of 0.5 acres. Only 4 Mahisha families owned land covering more than 1 hectare, and that too was acquired by purchase of land in the last 15 to 20 years. In brief, the economic uplift of the Mahishos of Kodampur was a recent phenomenon, and they were yet to emerge as a dominant caste in the village. All these factors combined to give some semblance of common interest amongst the Mahishos and Bagdis even before the government's land acquisition drive had begun in the area. So it did not seem unnatural for these two communities to readily join hands in the land movement to save their village agricultural land. Caste and politics. An 80-year-old person from the Kayastho caste of Kalipur, whilst narrating the social changes that had taken place in the village, said that previously, when the Kayasthos were at the helm of the village affairs, there was amity between the upper and the lower caste in the village. An understanding existed between the haves and the have-nots, resulting in peaceful coexistence. Since caste was associated with politics, those days had gone. Now the upper and the lower castes are always at loggerheads with each other. The more the village society is imbibed with politics, the more the conflicts between the haves and the have-nots are increasing. ये क्या अजीब चुतियापा है. कास्ट ब्रेकअप जब हो रहा है, कास्ट ब्रेकडाउन जब हो रहा है, because of maybe commie politics and the narratives of caste being an evil Hindu construction etc. तब हैव और हैव नॉट्स का युद्ध और भी इंक्रीज हो रहा है, क्योंकि हैव नॉट्स तो है ही, कॉमी पॉलिटिक्स है इसलिए, और वहां पे स्टेटस एक्सक्लूसिविटी खोने का भी एस्पेक्ट है यहाँ पे कि नहीं नहीं अब तुम मेरे क्लब में क्यों घुस रहे हो. हर तरफ से चुतियापा हो रहा है. The old man reminisced about the past when the dominant castes enjoyed social and political power and the lower castes submitted to their dominance without question. He correctly assessed that politics had been the cause of all the changes in the caste and Rajniti in the caste and power relationship in the village. By saying politics, he obviously meant leftist politics as opposed to the erstwhile domination of Congress politics in the village. So, this is what people mean when they say that why do we need to listen to Sanjeev Sanyal's opinions on history? What are his credentials? तू कौन है भोसरी के इतिहास के बारे में बात करने वाला? Okay. So I once had a debate with a commie friend of mine from presidency about transgenders in sports, especially MMA. His first sentence was, yes, obviously it should be allowed. I thought he will say that, yes, I believe it should be allowed and you believe it should not be allowed. Let's now discuss. He started the debate by being absolutely aggressive, arrogant, and vehement. And his defense for that statement was that none of us are experts in endocrinology and hormones and stuff. So what the fuck do we know? So how can you as a random college dropout musician comment on a transgender person fighting in MMA? कैसे होगा? तू कौन है भोसरी के? That is the idea we are talking about here. So, in the predominantly scheduled caste tribal inhabited village of Kalipur, the Casteism held most of the village agricultural land and enjoyed social authority until the 1960s. They were the, देखो कांग्रेस कभी dominant caste के structures से चुतियापा नहीं करता है, CPM भी उसको maintain करता है, but in different ways. They were the proponents of Congress politics in the village when the scheduled caste tribal people at large were indifferent to party politics. The uprising of the scheduled caste tribal communities of Kalipur had almost been organically linked with the rise of the leftist politics in the state. In the late 1960s, as the state witnessed the first non-Congress governments in the form of the two brief United Front regimes of which the leftist parties were the main constituents, the village Kalipur saw a phenomenal rise in the peasant movement that initiated, like never before, a process of deep-rooted changes in the caste and power relationships. As the Communist Party of India Marxist entered the village political scene with its call of mobilization of landless and marginal peasants for unearthing and grabbing of above-ceiling lands from the landed gentry, along with hiking of labor wages, the tribal people of the village were the first to be mobilized in the struggles. The ensuing period saw a sharp division in the village polity between the landless belonging to the scheduled caste tribal communities and the landed gentry of the higher castes. The middle caste mahishos of the village, notwithstanding their traditional support of Congress politics, did not enter into open conflict with the rising leftist politics. क्यों करेगा? अब तो वो लोअर कास्ट मार्जिनलाइज है नहीं, उसको अब वो पावर का खून चग गया है, ठीक है, अब उसको भी ओपन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में नहीं जाना है लेफ्टिस्ट के साथ. Rather, they were narrowly subjected to caste domination and yet to gather substantial land in their hands. The peasant movement of that period built the foundation of leftist politics in the village, though astonishingly, the present Communist Party of India Marxist leadership in the area seldom remembered those days. The second phase of the scheduled caste tribal uprising in Kalipur started with the advent of left front rule in the year 1977. Yeah, because we were talking about even pre-CPIM coming to power in the entire state. Now what happens when they do come to the power in the state? Also at that time, the tribal people were at the forefront of peasant struggles that also involved scheduled caste people. In the meantime, The Mahishos of Kalipur and Madhupur emerged as the most prosperous caste in the twin villages, as some of them purchased substantial agricultural land from the erstwhile caste landlords and utilized the Green Revolution technology along with commercial farming and agro-based business activities to advance their economic capabilities. And I have heard from legit academics that Green Revolution actually did not even happen in West Bengal. So I don't know what's the basis of saying this. I don't know how true this claim is. Okay. And how did they become richer out of the blue without where the entire state was going to hell? That is a different question altogether. Let's check out this footnote. Even after the promulgation of the Land Reform Act 1955 during the Congress regime, the rural gentry retained much of the above ceiling land through evasive transfers to relatives, friends, and fictitious persons. Lol, fictitious persons. This land was popularly termed Benami land, Benami Jomi, the land without real names of the owners. After the installation of successive United Front governments in West Bengal in the late 1960s, a peasant movement broke out in many parts of West Bengal, principally to reclaim these Benami lands so far held by the landlords through their connection with the administration and the political leaders in power. The Communist Party of India Marxists became popular amongst the poor in the countryside by leading this movement. The history of the village Kalipur is closely knotted with the neighboring village Madhupur. The two villages have traditionally been so interlinked with each other that the social dynamics of one village cannot be explored without considering the situation prevailing in the other village. As a result, they enhance their status from marginal peasant, the Mahishos, marginal peasant, to small, semi-medium and medium only one family landholding categories, the middle castes. They occupied the social position of a dominant caste, particularly after the erstwhile dominant caste families mostly migrated to the cities or towns. अब वो कास्ट फैमिली का माइग्रेशन जब कोलकाता में हुआ, उसके लड़के वहां पे जाके कॉमी बन गए, प्रेसिडेंसी में घुस गए और पास आउट करके यूएसए पहुंच गए. ठीक है, यहां पे जो डोमिनेंट कास्ट बन गया विलेज में, वो भोसरी के हमेशा हमेशा के लिए डोमिनेंट कास्ट बन गया विलेजेस में, जो कि वहां पे सीपीआईएम का गुंडागर्दी मेंटेन करते रहा, आजकल तृणमूल का करता है. ठीक है, दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ वेस्ट बंगाल पॉलिटिक्स इन अ जिस्ट. So in the post-1977 period, the prosperous Mahisho families became the target of the peasant movement. But unlike the Caistos, they subsequently built up a rapport with the Communist Party of India, Marxist, and strategically utilized their relationship with institutional politics to further their own interests. In the meantime, the rejuvenation of the Panchayati Raj system in 1978 enhanced the importance of the scheduled caste tribal communities in village politics, and particularly as the Kalipur Panchayat seat has been reserved for the scheduled caste tribal people since then. Since तो reserved ही है, वहां पे state sanctioned status दिया जा रहा है सिर्फ scheduled caste को, के वहां पे पंचायत लीडर कोई और बन पाएगा ही नहीं. जितना भी अच्छा उसका ग्रास रूट कनेक्शन हो, जितना भी एडुकेटेड हो, जितना भी हार्ड वर्किंग हो, जितना भी अच्छा लीडर हो, वो भोसरी को किसी भी तरह से हम वहां पे पंचायत लीडर नहीं बनने देंगे, क्योंकि अफर्मेटिव एक्शन. Undoubtedly, the scheduled caste tribal population initially turned into a strong support base for the Communist Party of India Marxists, principally due to the support the party provided to these communities in their struggles against the landed gentry. The symbiotic relationship between the Communist Party of India Marxists and the scheduled caste tribal people of the village changed with the entrenchment of the party in state power and its subsequent change in policy from struggle to reform. तो गांडू बना के, जब किसी को चुतिया बना के तुम पावर में आते हो, तब तुम पावर में आने के बाद तुम ये नहीं बोल सकते हो कि नहीं नहीं तुम तो चुतिया नहीं हो, तुम तो हार्ड वर्किंग लेबरर हो, अब आओ काम करो ये में कैपिटलिज्म में. तो यही है सीपीएम का स्टोरी, यही है तृणमूल का स्टोरी. माई हंच इज यही बीजेपी का भी स्टोरी होगा, क्योंकि बीजेपी को अगर पावर में आना है तो शायद लखीर भंडार 3,000 रुपए 5,000 रुपए डिक्लेयर कर देना होगा. तो वो अभी जो लखीर भंडार का बजट है वो है 12,000 करोड़ रुपए, और वेस्ट बंगाल का जीडीपी है $240 बिलियन. तो 5,000 रुपए जब कर देंगे तो उसका पैसा कहां से आएगा, और एक दिन में इतने सारे गुंडों को भी कहां भेजेंगे, और ब्यूरोक्रेसी भी कितना बात सुनेगा कि तुम अचानक ऐसा इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन कर दोगे कि वो लखीर भंडार का पैसा आ जाएगा. तो देखते हैं बिना चुतिया बनाए कोई पावर में आ सकता है कि नहीं वेस्ट बंगाल में. Nandish, yeah, I have heard they missed out on Green Revolution. I mean, what I've heard is that it technically happened, it officially happened, but not exactly how it should have happened. I mean, they did not get directly the benefits of Green Revolution. I think I've heard that it actually did not need Green Revolution. Onurilan Shomiti, yes, 5,000. I made a video on it 2 years back. On that year's, people did not catch it up, and of course, I did not want it to go viral. I made a live stream on it and did not share it too much. But that year it was 5,166 crore rupees budget, okay, 2 years back. And not one single news media in the entire fucking country covered it. I was just curious because I had recently found out things like walk of board and minority institution funding and stuff. So I sat down with my then girlfriend, for 2 hours, repeatedly going through the math because it was not covered by anyone. No. So I had to go through the government budget papers. Then I checked with a chartered accountant, Agarwal, friend of mine, again 2-3 times. And yes, that the amount was basically 5,166 crores. And a lot of it was some allocations were done in the name of minority institutions and SC/ST institutions as a heading. But when you see what the allocation is for what specific action, वहां पे तुम देखोगे कि SC/ST का ज्यादा मेंशन नहीं रहता है. वहां पे सिर्फ वो हमारे भाइयों के इंस्टीट्यूशंस के ही मेंशंस रहते हैं. So that's the trajectory. So yeah, so what I'm pointing out, Anushka and Shomit, is that this is happening every year. Thus, the trajectory of the changing relationship between caste and power traversed a zigzag path after 1978. After 1977, the tribal community ceased to be the main support base of the Communist Party of India Marxists and gave way to the Bagdis, who became the politically more favored caste by virtue of its closer relationship with the ruling party. Proximity to power is everything. Again, Declan Quigley का ही रिसर्च देखो यहाँ पे. सेम चीज हो रहा है, कोई और कर रहा है किसी और तरीके के पावर के साथ, काम एक ही होगा. The tribal community fell apart from the party as the latter withdrew its support to a continuous agricultural labor strike for a wage hike in 1984 and indeed assaulted the recalcitrant tribal leader in its bid to break the strike. Local leaders of the party who hailed from the upper caste landed families were reluctant to advance the strike, which went against their own class interest as well. After the incident, the laboring people consisting of the scheduled caste tribal communities began to lose their political rising to the landed Mahishos, who gained dominance through their strategic relationship with the ruling party. Marginal milling below 1 hectare. Okay, ye to theek hai. There was a simmering discontent amongst the scheduled caste tribal people over corruption in the public distribution system, but they did not dare protest against the local ration dealer, a landed Brahmin who was also one of the main party leaders of the locality. As the Communist Party of India Marxist shifted its focus from struggle to reform, the earlier relationship between the party, तो पहले था सिर्फ बवाल करना है, अब है कुछ काम एग्जीक्यूट करना है, तो you need different kinds of people now. अब क्या करोगे भोसरी के? So I heard this from Madam Political Scientist that there are papers, there is research into this, that how, I don't remember if she was talking about CPIM specifically or communist parties in general, like in China as well. I think CPIM only specifically, how they used these lower caste and SC/ST communities who were poorer as deliberately as just their gundas to fight against those landed communities and business owners and stuff, but made sure that they never actually that's kind of obvious, but she said something more specific, that it was almost a declared quasi घोषित पोजीशन कि यस इनको हम मोबिलाइज ही करेंगे. ये देखो बार बार मोबिलाइज वर्ड जो यूज हो रहा है ना यहाँ पे, वही मैडम पॉलिटिकल साइंटिस्ट हैड आल्सो पॉइंटेड आउट कि ये इनको सिर्फ मोबिलाइज करने के लिए ही काम आएंगे ये सब लोग, तो वही करवाओ, मोबिलाइज करो, भड़का दो अपर कास्ट के अपर कास्ट में नहीं, वो मतलब रिच लोगों के अगेंस्ट, और फिर वो शाही बड़ी मैसाकर करो, और फिर जब तुमको रिफॉर्म करना है तब बाल छेड़ो, तब कुछ भी मत उखाड़ो, तब गड्ढे में डाल दो स्टेट. Dada, I think this community for helping me understand this entire caste issue in depth. Now I know almost. रुको अभी भी बहुत कुछ बाकी है, but yes, I get your sentiment here. Thank you. So, as the CPIM shifted its focus from the struggle to reform, the earlier relationship between the party and the scheduled caste tribal communities of the village underwent important changes. While the tribal community tried to seek some other ally in the wake of their disenchantment with the ruling party, the scheduled caste communities, particularly the Bagdis, seemed to embrace the new politics of the party, which was based mainly on benefit distribution through the panchayat. As some of these benefits were meant for the scheduled caste tribal people, the Bagdis tried to garner the best of the panchayat benefits by dint of their rapport with the ruling party. Because of their numerous presence in the village population, this caste received more attention in electoral politics because closer to the ruling party, became closer to the ruling party, and finally assumed the coveted position of panchayat pradhan. एक बार ये मोबिलिटी आने दो, फिर जो मेरे से नीचे है उसको मारो गोली. It was alleged by other scheduled caste groups and tribal people that almost all the Bagdi families had received loans from the panchayat after Khogen Mullik. Are they talking about Khogen Murmu? Who was that? I don't remember. Is Khogen Murmu a BJP MP? After Khogen Malik became the panchayat pradhan, it seemed that the welfare politics of the state for the uplift of the so-called backward sections resulted in competition among the lower castes and tribal people to garner more benefits for their respective communities. Both the tribal people and the dules from the scheduled caste community complained of irregularities in the distribution of panchayat benefits in favor of Bagdis. The tribal people expressed grievances over the comparatively passive role of the Bagdis during the period of struggle and their subsequent cornering of benefits that seemed disproportionately more than they deserved. Same deserving ka chutiapa bhi ghus gaya yahan pe. Pakhi Murmu, the veteran tribal leader, regretted that the old solidarity among the scheduled caste communities and the tribal people in the village, on the basis of which once the laboring people of these communities could assert themselves, was spoiled due to the politics of benefit distribution. Comical wealth redistribution भी ठीक से नहीं हुआ, कुछ ग्रुप्स को ज्यादा मिल गया, इक्वालिटी नहीं आया. LOL. Footnote says the resentment of the villagers against corrupted ration dealers broke into violent agitations in the rural areas, mostly in the CPIM dominated South Bengal districts in the year 2007, and was widely reported in the news media. In many such cases of agitation, the ruling party leaders and panchayat officials became the targets of people's wrath. Institutional politics seemed to have a role in the declining rebellion of the scheduled caste tribal communities vis-a-vis in the context of the upper caste domination. Empowerment. The question of empowerment of the lower caste or antyaj castes through reservation of panchayat seats and posts and mandatory inclusion of representatives of the socially deprived sections in various village level committees like the village education committee and the village development committee, Gram Unnayan committee, may be examined in the background of these politics. Let's see kya ukhada in logon ne. The lower caste representative of Kalipur had assumed the coveted seat of the panchayat pradhan, only to find himself to be a fish out of water in the existing power structure essentially managed by the rural elite. The CPIM considered him to be a dummy in the position of power rather than a real authority of the local panchayat. ये है tokenism. यही होगा. तुम जब affirmative action demand करोगे, गांडू तुमको सिर्फ tokenism ही मिलेगा और कुछ नहीं मिलेगा. Indeed, it arranged for upper caste persons who had been in charge of the panchayat earlier to carry on running it. देखो क्या चुतियापा चल रहा है. लोअर कास्ट आदमी को CPIM डमी टोकनिज्म करके बिठा के, नॉट जस्ट एज एन अनइंटेंडेड कॉन्सिक्वेंस के देखो इसके पास रियल पावर नहीं है. नो, इंटेंडेड, डेलिबरेटली अपर कास्ट पर्सन को बिठा रहा है पंचायत में, नॉट ऑफिशियली बट चलाने के लिए. ये है वन ऑफ द रीजंस व्हाई CPIM स्टेड इन पावर. देखो कितने हरामी लोग थे. The 73rd Amendment 1993 of the Constitution made reservation for scheduled caste, tribal and women mandatory in the three-tier Panchayati Raj institutions. According to the amendment, the number of seats to be reserved for the scheduled caste and tribal would be determined according to the proportion of population of scheduled caste and tribal to the total number of population in that constituency. 1/3 of the reserved seats for scheduled caste and tribal will be reserved for the women of the aforesaid communities. Apart from this, 1/3 of the total seats of the three-tier panchayats must be reserved for the women, including the seats reserved for the scheduled caste and tribal women. Notably, no seat will be reserved permanently. Oh, rather than the seats will be rotationally reserved for scheduled caste, tribal and the women. The seats of the तो समझ लो कि इस साल में वुमेन के लिए रिजर्वेशन है, मगर कॉम्पिटेंट कैंडिडेट है कोई लड़का, तो वो उसको कैंडिडेसी नहीं मिला. अगले साल एक एक लड़की को कैंडिडेसी नहीं मिलेगा अगर वो किसी नॉन शेड्यूल कास्ट से है. अगर कोई कॉम्पिटेंट लड़की भी है फ्रॉम एन अपर कास्ट. क्या क्या देखो, क्या जीनियस. सेल्फ गोल के ऊपर सेल्फ गोल के लेयर के ऊपर है और एक और लेयर ऑफ सेल्फ गोल है हमारा सिस्टम. फिर गांडू लोग बोलेंगे यूएसए में क्यों सब फंक्शन करते. यूएसए में एज इफ हर कुछ में अफर्मेटिव एक्शन है. यूएसए में फंक्शन आजकल नहीं करता है, ठीक है. अब तो हाँ, हमारे ऑक्सीडेंटल भाई भी आ जाएंगे, मगर ज्यादातर चीजें इंडिया से तो बेटर है. इंडिया में कुछ चीज में मेरिटोक्रेसी नहीं है. ये सब सेल्फ गोल के ऊपर सेल्फ गोल, सेल्फ गोल के ऊपर सेल्फ गोल के लेयर की वजह से. The seats of the pradhans, chief of the gram panchayats, Shabhapati, president of the panchayat shamiti, and Shabhadhipati, president of the zilla parishad, will also be reserved for scheduled caste, tribal and women by an act passed by the West Bengal State Assembly. To ensure universal literacy, and government formed the government formed the Village Education Committee (VEC) under the direction of Sarva Shiksha Abhijan. The SSA is a program of central government of India for universal elementary education, which actually made sure a lot of good schools closed down. Check out Jesai Deepak's phenomenal speech on this topic, which I can't find anymore for some reason. It's not deleted. It's उनका इतना सब content आ गया है Jesai Deepak का, इसलिए वो थोड़ा पीछे चला गया है. It's from 3-4 years back. He was wearing an orange kurta, sweating like a fucking pig in a very small, closed sort of a primary school classroom. Okay, there he absolutely destroyed the idea of this fundamental right to education and stuff. How it destroyed so many schools, basically arguing from a libertarian perspective. Okay, check out that speech by Jesai Deepak if you can find it. So the tasks of the VCR, Village Education Committee, are to enhance the enrollment of students and oversee the quality of learning in village schools. ये देखो, blind leading the blind. The Village Development Committee or Gram Unnayan Samiti is a statutory body to be elected through the Gram Sanshad meeting and is empowered to look after all the development works being undertaken in a Gram Sanshad area under the auspices of the Panchayat. Oh, इतना बड़ा footnote था भोसरी के, fuck. Okay, so anyway, it was quite explicit that the actual power of the panchayat. अच्छा नहीं ये footnote तो हाँ, ये footnote खत्म हुआ यहाँ पे. Fuck, मैं भूल ही गया था कि footnote पढ़ रहा हूँ. Lol. It was quite explicit that the actual power of the panchayat, including the decision-making authority, rested mainly on Bidhan Mandal, the zonal secretary of the Communist Party of India, and his wife, both having acted as panchayat chiefs earlier, while the latter being the upapradhan in the present panchayat. तो भाई देखो, टोकनिज्म करके क्या फालतू में उखाड़ा. सिर्फ हिंदुइज्म को 4 गाली दिया, उससे ज्यादा कुछ भी नहीं हो पाया. See, actually, why reservation should not be done, here we can get another example, another I think argument that yes, don't do this fake tokenism reservation thing, because जब तुम किसी अनक्वालिफाइड बंदे को बिठा रहे हो वहां पे, तुम तो उसका बैकडोर ढूंढ रहे हो, जस्ट लाइक द stupid Brahmins of yesteryears who made insane unfollowable ritual laws, then found ritual backdoors to enforce them, okay, or to have convenience. In the same way, commies have created rules which they seek backdoors to, just like Brahmins of yesteryears. तो तब क्या हो रहा है कि तुम्हारा टोकन अनक्वालिफाइड आदमी हमेशा टोकन और अनक्वालिफाइड ही रह रहा है, और जो कि क्वालिफाइड है, जो कि अपर कास्ट से है, वो हमेशा के लिए अपर कास्ट ही रह रहा है, हमेशा के लिए ही एडुकेटेड होते जा रहा है. तो इंस्टेड, हाउ अबाउट यू बाइट द बुलेट, डोंट गिव रिजर्वेशन, बट इन द एंड देयरफॉर आइदर allow free markets or let the desperation of people work in some way. Okay, free market तो necessary है ही, but even then some way or the other, make people realize why and how they are not being able to become the qualified person who will be able to run this panchayat according to the wishes of the CM और द पॉलिटिकल पार्टी इन पावर. ऐसा क्या है? क्योंकि ये तो सिर्फ करप्शन का भी चीज नहीं है ना, कि करप्शन करवाना होता तो वो लोअर कास्ट से भी करा लेगा, अपर कास्ट से भी करा लेगा. उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम है? उसको अपर कास्ट ही क्यों चाहिए? क्योंकि कुछ टेक्निकल स्किल्स का शायद जरूरत हो रहा है, वो नहीं मिल रहा है लोअर कास्ट से, तो लोअर कास्ट को डमी टोकनिज्म करके राजा मनु को गाली देके अपर कास्ट से अपना करप्ट काम भी करवा रहा है. तो देखो, चुतियापा के लेयर के ऊपर एक चुतियापा का लेयर, एक और चुतियापा का लेयर. Zonal Secretary of Communist Party, yeah. So the panchayat members and the officials generally approached party leader Bidhan Mondal, who was a primary school teacher but regularly attended the panchayat office after school hours to look after its functioning. The villagers approached the Upapradhan, ignoring the presence of the Pradhan in the panchayat office, to redress their problems or with pleas for help. The Pradhan attended the office only to sign on the dotted lines as and when required, as if the party was doing a favor by managing the works of the Pradhan that Khoghan Malik might find difficult to manage. Yes. Kya brilliant thinking hai. Wow. I'm saying sarcastically, okay? If any Ambedkarite is watching this. Khoghan Malik, the lower caste Pradhan, had mixed reactions to this state of affairs. On the one hand, he accepted the situation from his mentality of subordination to the upper caste and remained somewhat grateful to the upper caste leadership for the support rendered by them in running the panchayat. On the other hand, he felt disgusted to act merely as an appendage to the leadership and expressed his grievances by saying, quote, "People might regard the Communist Party of India Marxist as a party of the poor and the disadvantaged, and the left front government a government of the same. But in actuality, that is not the case. Both the party and the government belong to the rich. It was a party of the riches, the Rajas. Holy fuck! क्या कोट है. हर कौमी भोसरी वालों के मुंह पे मारो ये पेपर, प्रिंट आउट निकालो, मेटाफोरिकली मुंह पे मारो. I'm not calling for violence, Chuti Ambedkarite, if anyone is watching my live stream. Fuck. He realized from his experience that only those who had wealth and education could run the panchayat, and that persons like him, having none of the two, were incapable to act in the position of power. Acha, aisa hai kya? His sense of incapability seemed to arise from the intervention of party leaders belonging to the higher castes, who presumably accepted a scheduled caste person in the position of Panchayat Pradhan under the compulsion of the reservation regime, but in actuality undermined his authority by allowing him to play only second fiddle in running the Panchayat. You don't say. What a big surprise. In fact, Khoghan was rendered worthless, faltu quote unquote, in local Bengali language by none other than the upper caste leadership of the party he belonged to. क्या धोती खोल रहा है कम्युनिज्म का. It seemed that for all practical purposes, it was Bidhan Mondal who acted as the main power center in the so-called local self-government and became the de facto Panchayat Pradhan. Thus, it appeared that the caste power relationship had not essentially changed despite reservation. Oh fuck! दयाबती रॉय ने हमारा आर्ग्यूमेंट भी कर दिया कि रिजर्वेशन करके भी चुतिया कुछ अचीवमेंट नहीं हुआ. Fuck. In fact, Khoghan was rendered worthless, faltu in local Bengali language by none other than the upper caste leadership of the party he belonged to. It seemed that for all practical purposes, it was Bidhan Mondal who acted as the main power center in the so-called local self-government and became the de facto Panchayat Pradhan. Thus, it appeared that the caste power relationship had not essentially changed despite reservation of the post of Pradhan to the scheduled caste community due to the upper caste leaders' reluctance to relinquish the power they had enjoyed for long. Bidhan had been the Pradhan of the Panchayat for 3 terms, 15 years, and his wife for 1 term. Moreover, the lower caste Pradhan was not in a position to assert his authority as head of the Panchayat. Though reservation had at least been instrumental in instilling an aspiration for political power among the lower caste people, the real transfer of power to the backward section could not possibly be achieved without a further uprising of the scheduled caste people in the political sphere. In village politics as well, Khoghan seemed not to hold real power. What a surprise. Even though he was the Panchayat representative and a branch committee member of the ruling party. The 2 upper caste leaders from the neighboring village, Manoj Datta and Nadu Chatterjee, first time a Brahmin is coming in this conversation today, by the way, other than Hitesh Ranjan channel. Manoj Datta and Nadu Chatterjee exercised actual power in the village affairs, though they held the same position in the ruling party like Khoghen, but were not elected as members of the panchayat. How could they exercise superior power than Khoghen Malik, a leader of the largest caste group of the village? How? ये रहस्य क्या है? It seemed that the upper caste background of Manoj and Nadu had facilitated their rise to the superior position in the power structure of the village. For example, Manoj Dotto did not have a much advanced level of formal education in comparison to Khoghen and was junior to him in the party. Okay, so it's not even real status. Oh, ये status है ही, but even education is not mattering in this case. As we found in the conversation of one Mahishwa part, so this is deliberate casteism, UP like casteism that's being done by CPIM. Holy shit. As we found in the conversation of one Mahishwa party activist, the upper caste party functionaries did not regard their lower caste comrade Khoghen as equal to them, as a knowledgeable and able person. This attitude of denigrating the lower caste person, even when he was in formal power, reflected the existence of a sense of caste prejudice, even in a party that claimed to represent the most downtrodden in the society, where reservation did not work, as said by the scholar herself. Thus, it appeared that in both the panchayat and the party, the two principal power centers in rural Bengal, as argued by Bhattacharya, the upper caste leadership was not set specifically to accept a person belonging to lower castes in the structure of power. The ideological overtone of caste seems to be reflected in the rural polity based on the division of Chotoloks and Bhadraloks. As mentioned earlier, the Chotolok Bhadralok division in the village, based mainly on the caste hierarchy, seemed to be so strong that neither the upper castes were ready to accept a lower caste person as their leader, nor the lower castes were in a position to assert their authority over village affairs. Harihar Bhattacharya argues panchayats have failed to become the center of people's power. It is just another center for party power in the state. Oh, अच्छा, ऐसा होता भी है. देखो, हम जब बोलेंगे कि this is the inevitability of socialism, तब हरिहर भट्टाचार्य जैसे लोग बोलेंगे कि नहीं नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, real socialism has not been tried. I am guessing, because usually such people are commies. If not, तो तब तो बढ़िया है. But key takeaways so far. Dayabati Roy, University of Helsinki sociology professor, is pointing out casteism in Bengal has nothing to do with dharmashastras. She is saying it happened because of economic compulsions. She is saying reservations did not solve the problem. Harihar Bhattacharya is saying, please note down these 4 points. I will need these notes myself. Harihar Bhattacharya is saying, or someone do time, or just do a comment in the video itself. I'll pin the comment. Okay, these key takeaways. Harihar Bhattacharya is saying कि पंचायत से भी कुछ उखाड़ा नहीं गया. Panchayats have failed to become the center of people's power. They just became center for the party power in the state. LOL. So, as mentioned earlier, the Chotolok Bhadralok division in the village, based mainly on the caste hierarchy, seemed to be so strong that neither the upper castes were ready to accept a lower caste person as their leader, nor the lower castes were in a position to assert their authority over village affairs, in spite of their numerical superiority in the village. Whilst the upper castes considered themselves far superior to the lower castes in all spheres of life, the lower castes also seemed reluctant to accept their subordinate position in the caste hierarchy, or not in a position to challenge the same in the field of politics. Earlier, during the 1960s and post-1977 period when CPIM did come to power, the scheduled caste tribal communities attained a dignified status in the village society by dint of their struggles against the Kayastho landed gentry in the first phase and the Mahishyo rich peasants in the second. But ये भी ना अकेले उनके वजह से नहीं हुआ था, ये भी हो रहा था क्योंकि कोलकाता से कायस्थो बाबूज were saying that yes, this is how you must fight. ठीक है, वो भी important है. Communist upper castes were also the philosophical and the ideological underpinnings of these movements. They were providing those things. Caste landed gentry in the first phase and the Mahishyo rich peasants in the second. But in the subsequent period of administrative reform, they achieved little in terms of social dignity to the upper castes, notwithstanding the fact that the village panchayat seat was all along reserved for the scheduled caste tribal communities. तो डिग्निफाइड स्टेटस मिला क्योंकि डिंट हुआ स्ट्रगल से अगेंस्ट कायस्थर्स in the first phase, and then against the Mahishro rich Mahishro peasants in the second phase. But in the subsequent period of administrative reform, CPIM का, they achieved little in terms of social dignity to the upper caste. Okay, देखो अब solidify हो गया, थोड़ा बहुत डिस्ट्रप्शन हुआ सीपीएम के पावर में आने की वजह से, इमीडिएटली थोड़ा जो डिस्ट्रप्शन हुआ था, ऐसे ऐसे हिल रहा था, वो ऐसे अटक गया एक जगह पे फिर से. So, but in the subsequent period of administrative reform, they achieved little in terms of social dignity to the upper castes, notwithstanding the fact that the village panchayat seat was all along reserved for the scheduled caste tribal communities. Other institutions of the village, like the village educational committee and the village development committee in Kalipur, consisted of scheduled caste tribal representatives as per the statute, but both were still run essentially by upper caste party leaders as observed by Bhattacharya. For example, the village education committee meeting that should be compulsorily held in the village school was called by the party leader Bidhan Mondol, who was not even a resident of the village, and held in the party office far away from the village. Resident bhi nahi hai. In contrast to Kalipur, the village of Kodampur witnessed the ascendancy of lower caste Bagdis in the echelons of local power, though only as a recent phenomenon in the wake of land movement. The village had not witnessed much caste antagonism during the contemporary period, and the Mahishos did not turn into a dominant caste as it was in Kalipur. The caste power relationship had also traversed an entirely different course in Kodampur. The Communist Party of India Marxist could never mobilize the lower caste people of the village on economic and other issues in its favor. The caste power relationship had also traversed an entirely different course in Kodampur. The CPIM could never mobilize the lower caste people of the village on economic and other issues in its favor. As a result, there was always a mixed response of different caste groups to different parties. Although the rise of the CPIM in the village had the support of both Mahishos and Bagdis of Kodampur, some of the Mahisho as well as Bagdi families had always been associated with the Congress party. Footnote says, Shukanta Bhattacharya had conducted a study on the basis of field work in a village of Bardhaman in June to August 1993. His study reveals that the numerical strength of the lower castes and lower classes has been established at the level of panchayat and other organization, but at the leadership level, concentration of power is found in the hands of middle peasantry. देखो, ये है honest scholarship. ये लोग ब्राह्मण्स को बैठ के आंख बंद करके गाली भी नहीं दे रहे, ये मिडिल कास्ट को भी ब्लेम कर रहे हैं for being collaborators of the parties in power. हम कह रहे हैं कि यही भोसरी का इनएविटेबल है, तो फालतू में रिजर्वेशन करके और इसको मत घोटाला करो. Notably, some prosperous Mahishos of Kodampur had associated with the Communist Party of India since the 1960s, though the landless scheduled caste people from its main support base. But a few Bagdi people had emerged as leader of the scheduled caste community in Kodampur both before and after 1977. After the chief CPIM leader from the Mahisho caste was accused in a corruption case during his tenure as the Panchayat Pradhan in the later half of the 1980s, support for the party eroded considerably among the village people of both castes, and in 1993, a Congress candidate was elected from the village Panchayat seat. In the 1998 Panchayat elections, the Communist Party of India Marxist regained the village seat only to lose it again to the Trinamool Congress Party candidate Dhiren Dhara in the 2003 Panchayat elections. Finally, during the anti-land acquisition movement, the Bagdis belonging to the CPIM mostly switched over to the Save Agricultural Land movement and subsequently became supporters of the Trinamool Congress Party. देखो, खुद का इंटरेस्ट सर्वोपरि. ओके, धर्म, जाति, कास्ट सॉलिडारिटी, एवरीथिंग डिपेंड्स ऑन पावर एंड रिसोर्स इंसेंटिव्स. ठीक है, पॉलिटिकल पार्टी का भी सॉलिडारिटी नहीं है. पॉलिटिकल पार्टी खुद का पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, खुद के कास्ट सॉलिडारिटी का पॉलिटिकल पार्टी अगर बोल रहा है कि हम यहाँ फैक्ट्री करेंगे, तब नहीं. तब अगर कोई और पावर में आने वाला है, अगर वो सूंघ भी लेता है, चलो 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 मारो गोली फैक्ट्री को, चलो दूसरे पार्टी में. Dhiren was the first scheduled caste person to be appointed as leader of the village Kodampur, not merely as a panchayat member, but more as a social activist and subsequently as an organizer of the anti-land acquisition movement. Social worker, social activist, what it means in West Bengal, some people know. Though Dhiren was elected as a panchayat member by virtue of reservation, he did not remain merely a leader of the Bagdis. Rather, he turned into a representative for the whole village, particularly in the wake of the land movement. His reputation as a village leader, even to the Mahishos, was possible not only due to his formal education and social activities and the prevailing non-antagonistic relation between the two categories of castes in Kodampur, but also due to his crucial role in the land movement. Because remember, Kodampur is sort of the village of basically a bit nicer people. Though the Bhadralok Chotalok division between the Mahishos and Bagdis might implicitly be present in the village, it did not deter the emergence of a Bagdi youth as an efficient leader of the village in its distress. Conclusion. Okay, footnote here है कि Trinamool Congress Party is a ठीक है. Conclusion है, it can be summed up that although in the economic field caste almost ceases to operate based on structural principles of the caste system, the division of labor largely coincides with the caste division under economic compulsion. Economic compulsion. Economic compulsion. ये है socialism. जिसके ऊपर दयाबती रॉय, professor of Helsinki, is laying the complete blame of Bengal's casteism on. ये सुनाओ अम्बेडकराइट्स को. The division of labor largely coincides with the caste division under economic compulsion, and quote unquote in ideological terms, the categories of caste have continued to provide many of the basic signifying terms through which collective identities and social relations are still perceived in Bengal 2008 through 12 when this paper is being written. Caste still seems to be a major dynamic reason in rural areas by which everyday politics revolves. The aspiration of upward mobility on the part of lower castes is also evident in the two villages. But the upward mobility of lower castes in the recent phase was more in Kodampur than in Kalipur for several reasons. But there was no single phenomenon that can explain the difference. In both villages, it can be said that the election of scheduled caste candidates through reservation of posts in the panchayat bodies might be a starting point of decentralization of power or empowerment of the so-called backward castes, and not an end in itself. This has been coupled in Kodampur with a number of other effects such as minimum economic capabilities, educational background, social activities, and political assertion through the recent land movement. देखो political assertion कैसे हुआ. So joining that land acquisition movement itself was sort of an acquiring of social capital. ठीक है, जैसे कि आज भी है. वो प्रोटेस्ट में जाना ही तुम्हारे लिए कूल बन जाता है, तुम्हारा वो एक सोशल क्रेडेंशियल बन जाता है. वो भी दयाबती राय पॉइंट आउट कर रही है. Social activities and political assertion through the recent land movement, ये हुआ, which facilitated a lower caste person to emerge as an actual leader of the village. In Kalipur, this had not been possible as the formal scheduled caste representation had not been supported by other factors. But things had not been static in Kalipur either. The initial achievements of the scheduled caste tribal communities attained through political movements could not be sustained, but were not lost altogether. While the dependence of the lower caste people on the upper castes was in the main continuing in the economic field, the party was dominating the legal political field with its upper caste leadership pretending to defend the interests of the lower castes. In the cultural ideological field, the sense of caste hierarchy was prevailing both in the political party and in society. In the cultural ideological field, the sense of caste hierarchy was prevailing both in the political party and in society. But there was simmering discontent of deprivation, particularly amongst the younger generation of the scheduled caste tribal communities who were organized in the youth club of Kalipur, which had been emerging as a social force independent of the organized political parties, who are today 60 to 70% voters of BJP. Hence, it seemed that the vertical social system based on caste hierarchy in rural West Bengal was diminishing, if not decaying. But the change in the age-old system had been ushered in by the social movements of the lower caste laboring people to achieve their demands and rights even before the idea of empowerment was enshrined in the Indian Constitution. It appears from this ethnographic study that institutional or formal decentralization of power could not eliminate caste-based hierarchy from the social and cultural body of society, if not accompanied by the so it was also accompanied by the upward mobility of the, if not accompanied by the upward mobility of the backward communities and the socio-political movement to fulfill the objective. The two courses of mobility espoused by Bose seem to be simultaneously operating in the study villages. One, by consolidating the social status of a caste after improving their economic position and maintaining their separation from equivalent castes whose economic status was lower. देखो, economic status में ये ऊपर उठ गया, बाकियों को मारा गोली. And two, by mobility movements, political movements representing economic grievances and deprivation. Okay, ये करके हुआ. Whilst the Mahishos in Kalipur had consolidated their social status following the first course of mobility, The scheduled caste tribal communities had tried the second course of mobility, which is a movement of assertion in association with other equivalent caste groups, which is the land acquisition movement, anti-land acquisition movement, I guess, and other similar any kind of movement, political movements and stuff. तो एक ग्रुप पावर में आता है, उठता है by consolidating social status following the first course of mobility. Okay, थोड़ा इकोनॉमिक मोबिलिटी जब हो गया, नया पॉलिटिकल पार्टी पावर में आने से, क्योंकि वो था करप्ट कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी. सेकेंड फेज ऑफ मोबिलिटी थोड़ा बहुत होता है, जबकि ये शिंगुर आंदोलन होता है. Whilst the Mahishos in Kalipur had consolidated their social status following the first course of mobility, the scheduled caste tribal community had tried the second course of mobility, a movement of assertion in association with other equivalent caste groups. In Kodampur, on the other hand, the movement against economic grievances and deprivation, though not a typical mobility movement, had unified two non-equivalent social groups, the Mahishos and Bagdis. So just like the age-old history of India, every village has different caste dynamics, even if it involves similar castes. In the rural polity of West Bengal, party politics seems to have a vital role to play in the movement of assertion. कि मैं कितना बड़ा हूं, वो दिखाने का जो मूवमेंट होता है. Vital role to play in the movement of assertion of the lower castes, as it may facilitate in some situations the movement of the lower castes and oppose the same in another situation. Assertion होगा भी कैसे, वो थोड़ा reservation कर देगा. The effective functioning of Panchayati Raj institutions has a dual effect on the social mobility of the lower castes in rural Bengal. On the one hand, it has augmented political aspiration amongst the lower castes to a certain extent through reservation of panchayat seats and posts, and on the other hand, it has created discrepancies and competition amongst equivalent lower caste groups by inculcating the politics of benefit distribution in them, जो कि अब खत्म नहीं होगा. 5,000 रुपए लक्ष्मी भंडार होगा, देना पड़ेगा बीजेपी को. However, the irreversible process of democratization seems to be continuing to awaken the lower castes, increasing their aspirations and enhancing their assertion. उससे भी कुछ नहीं होगा, वो तुम कैचअप खेलते रहो, तुम अपर कास्ट का स्पोर्ट देखो, अपर कास्ट का फूड कंज्यूम करो, अपर कास्ट के तरह मेकअप करो, वो फ्लिप करके कुछ और मेकअप कर लेगा और स्पोर्ट देख लेगा और फूड खा लेगा. ठीक है. हाँ, मोबिलिटी एंड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. ओके, दिस वाज द एंड ऑफ द पेपर. होली शिट. Thank you, Fain Jonda. It's a play on the name of the actress Jane Fonda. Yes, I know you are not butthurt. Yes, you don't have a dog in this fight. This is why putting Hindu identity over caste interests is essential. The political leaders need to create such incentives. Exactly. Political incentives bina nahi hoga. Okay, then I'm going away without now getting into too much discussion on the comments live stream, comments and stuff, because I'm very tired basically. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for sticking to the end, up until the end. If possible, anyone can put those 3-4 key takeaways of the paper. I'll pin it in the comment section. Thank you for joining, guys. This was a very, very valuable, awesome, amazing paper. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye. Good night.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रष्टाम्बरप्रदं हस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं ललज्जयः पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत्. चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत्. काली काली महाकाली कालिके पापहारिणी धर्मर्थमोक्षदे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते. धर्मर्थमोक्षदे